will officially. Good evening, you think a year later I would understand this stuff. Uh, Gotta wait for it. Welcome to the July 6th legislative meeting for 2026. I will call this meeting to order at 7:05. The first thing we'll do is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Council members, they can't hear us online, so we may need to unmute can someone hear us? Okay, they can hear us now. Okay, we're good to go. They hear us now. We did the Pledge of Allegiance. Hopefully you did it as well, if you chose to. Okay, next up we have the approval of the agenda. Any amendments to the agenda or stated conflicts of interest for the agenda items?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman.
I'd just like to point out that this agenda does not
Hello, good evening, everybody.
does not align with the rules of this body, in that all presentations are not occurring after the monthly finance report as dictated by council rules and procedures.
Thank you, council member. My rationale for the agenda moving is I know there is a couple topics that folks want to talk about. My goal is to try and make sure that we have the bulk of the conversations around the proposals around immigration enforcement in the community all together, and have the first part of the meeting hit two presentations, hit some of our legislative information, and then presentations towards the end, so that we can have a meeting that is, I think, coherent in terms of the flow of it. And we're also having a closed session later on, or at least there's a motion to close the meeting as well. This will be our first closed meeting in person. And so we'll have to navigate what that looks like in terms of clearing the council chambers. People are obviously free to wait outside. We plan on returning back to open session afterwards. And so we're navigating some stuff. It's a little unprecedented, but I think we'll get the hang of it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, but our rules and procedures don't allow for that flexibility. I don't want to get into a back and forth over that now. I'm just stating that for the minutes, that this agenda is not in order.
Okay, well, we won't get into it, but our rules and procedures dictate what is in our meetings typically, but they're not, we don't have certain agendas. Sometimes we don't have presentations. And so it's been noted. I appreciate the concern. Any other conflicts of interest or agenda amendments to the agenda?
I've neither.
Looking online, seeing and hearing none. All right, let's move forward with the monthly financial report. The staff presentation for this.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Council member.
We did not approve the agenda.
Good point. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Fode. Any discussion on the motion? Or we'll go to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Nope.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnot?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos?
Aye.
Councilmember Kalan?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The motion passes 6-1. Okay, next, do we have a presentation from staff on the monthly finance report?
We do. It's a little bit loud. My apologies for that. We have Deputy Director Jones with us this evening, I believe.
Welcome back, Deputy Director.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's finance reports, subject to audit, cover the months of April, May, June, as well as a year-to-date. So I'll be covering the revenue for June and the year to date. Just want to make note that we still are in the process of closing out fiscal year 26. So these numbers are not by any means final. But so yes, at this point, so for fiscal year 26 revenue, we have a total of 882,000, with expenditures totaling 797,922, with a revenue net expenditure amount of $84,709. For fiscal year 26, year-to-date total, we have revenue totaling 12,755,163, um, which is actually, yeah, exceeds our budget. We are at 109% there. On the expenditure side, $10,071,880, which is about 86% of what we had budgeted. So yeah, this is right on target with where we expect to be as far as revenue and expenditures. Town has already exceeded its budgeted revenue and expects to stay within the budgeted expenditures. So yeah, if there are any questions regarding the financial reports, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Any questions from council? Okay. Only question is, you mentioned that we sort of exceeded the budgeted revenue amounts. What impact does that have on the budget process moving forward?
Well, because we are still so early in the process of closing out the year. We probably won't know exactly what the final figures look like till August, because we do have it's 6 months after the fiscal year closes, for us to continue to record any revenues or expenditures that were received in the previous fiscal year. So around next month, we should have a better idea of exactly where we land. And then, we'll be able to have a better explanation there.
Okay, thank you. If there are any other questions from council, is there a motion to adopt the monthly finance report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, second by Councilmember Lingua. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll go to roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnop?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos?
Aye.
Councilmember Cologne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the correspondence summary. There are no items as part of the correspondence summary. Okay. Next, we have public comments. Are there any public comments? Yes, please come forward. Unmute your mic so you're heard. If you're online, if you have public comments, please feel free to raise your hand as well, and we'll get to you in order.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
Council, staff. Nova Johns, resident of Ward 3 and president of the Riverdale Fire Department. I'm coming with a report from the fire department. 12 members of our department had the honor of attending Maryland State Firefighters Conference and Convention June 20th and 24th. Members had the opportunity to attend fire operation classes, emergency medical, continuing education, mental health seminars, recruitment and retention, grant classes, as well as leadership classes. So the department thanks the council for that opportunity tremendously. We will be announcing our August date for our release of a second annual Operation Buddies in Uniform, which is a community-driven lemonade stand fundraiser hosted by Riverdale Fire Department in partnership with local students. We had a fantastic turnout and fundraiser last year, so we wish to continue that each August. So we will announce that as soon as possible. Fireworks. We appreciate residents for attending the Town of Bladensburg fireworks display on July 3rd. Riverdale Fire Department was invited to be on standby at the event to provide suppression support and emergency medical services on one side of the Anacostia, while Bladensburg Fire Department provided the same on the opposite side. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to make that request happen with our staffing. As a reminder, fireworks are illegal in Prince. I know with the World Cup and the continuation of 4th of July extending through the year, through the weeks, we want to remind you that they are illegal. Unfortunately, St. Mary's County lost a father who was trying to attempt to save his 10-year-old child, the direct result of fireworks that were not distinguished. So fireworks safety does not stop once the fireworks display is over with. You need to take time to soak, properly dispose of. Our ground is extremely wet, even with the rain. So please, if you can find designated spots to go watch these fireworks, I just want to remind you they are extremely dangerous. With the uncertain and unpredictable weather, the fire department wants you to be reminded if your home is without power, please remember these important safety tips. Treat all down power lines as if they are energized. Stay away and report utility or call 911 immediately. Never operate your generators inside your home, your garage, your basement, or any enclosed area. Place generators at least 20 feet from your home and with the exhaust directed away from doors, windows, and vents. Use flashlights instead of candles whenever possible to reduce the risk of fire. Keep your refrigerator and your freezers closed to preserve your food. And traffic signals are without power, treat them as an intersection as four-way stop. Check on your neighbors and your friends. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Hi, I'm Kathy Gallagher. I'm a citizen here, and I just came tonight because I know that one of the things that will be talked about later will be immigration concerns, but I don't know how long the closed session will last. So just wanted to say today I submitted requests to my church and the local Immigrant Resource Collective for two families whose loved ones were taken by ICE. And I want to name that there's this growing crisis of unsupported families with small children. And our neighbors in Hyattsville have stepped up and created a fund to try to offset the financial catastrophe that often happens when the only breadwinner is taken and there's a mom with small kids who has to care for them. And I just hope that, like, one thing I wanted to say tonight is government steps up when the goodwill of neighbors isn't enough to offset disaster. We do that with a lot of things like fire departments, and we do that with schools. And I would ask us to see this in a similar light and really think about how can we be a net of care for our neighbors. The IRC has raised over $300,000 for families in the last year, but the needs far outstrip what individual donors can do. So that's why I came tonight. I'm hoping that as a council, you can think about ways we can put our town resources to help our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, fellow citizens, and visitors. My name is Joe Kelly. I'm a resident of Riverdale Park since 1985. There is an old saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The Trump administration's immigration policies and their justifications for enforcement are lies. Lies. That needs to be said clearly and often. The best time to repudiate those lies was November 2024. The next best time is now. I urge the council to take immediate action this evening to adopt and implement the community-generated proposals on this matter. There is no reason to delay while trying to craft a diplomatic policy. The other side will not negotiate or compromise. So here's another old saying: damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandy Silberman. I'm a longtime resident of Riverdale since 1988. And I am here tonight also to say that I am in favor, wholeheartedly with the proposals that were generated by the community. We as a town and as individuals need to step up and do what's right, what's ethical, and what will protect our neighbors, our friends, our community. I agree that I hope it's all adopted tonight, but if not, I urge that instead of waiting 2 months for the next town council, that a special session is called so that we do everything we can as quickly as we can. This is urgent. This is people's lives, livelihood, the ability to eat, to pay rent, to have a place to live, to care for their children. There is so much at stake. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison, I see your comment online. Is Alice in the room now? After this next one, you can go on. Well, you can, if you're, I'm assuming your hand is raised, you'll go next. If you hear me, that's okay. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Mara Collins. I'm in Ward 1. I'm also here to comment in support of the 6 community-generated proposals that I believe are presented on June 22nd under the heading of One Riverdale Policy and Procedures. I share the sentiments of the residents who spoke before me, but also I believe that these proposals are very prudent and extremely timely, and acting now would be in the best interest of everyone in the town, including its staff, officers, and the entirety of its residents. Clarifying the town policy, codifying clear procedures in legislation, and communicating these procedures and policies to residents and staff explicitly will only give everyone a more firm basis on which to act in what will surely be more and more increasing encounters that are going to be unexpected. So I think it just gives everyone benefits, and creating a town liaison and supporting community members who've been harmed by all these recent actions is just as others have said, it's the minimum that we can do to support people in great need who are part of our community. So I am here to affirm my support for these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Allison. You're next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I'm not a big Zoomer. Hi, my name is Allison Spain. I'm a Riverdale resident for about 13 years, raised in Maryland, in Montgomery and PG counties, longtime DCite, and I'd like to speak tonight in support of Council Member Smith's proposal and urge the council to, sorry, I've got a bunch of light here, I'm trying to make pizza. Urge the council to adopt his proposals immediately and to call an emergency session so that they can be adopted as soon as possible. I'd like to echo some of the comments of my neighbors, Ms. Gallagher, Sandy Silverman, Joe Kelly. The time is now, the time was yesterday. It's the time to be brave. It's scary. It's a scary time right now to put ourselves on the line. It's not going to get less scary. I'm scared when I'm out with my kids right now. I can't imagine how some of my neighbors feel. And, I've seen them working in 100-degree heat, building our community, taking care of our community. and it's time that we stand up for them. I'm sure we can go over them. I'm not aware or very knowledgeable about the minutia of how a county council meeting or a town council meeting runs. What I do know is that we need immediate action and we need to stand up, and the time is now. So I encourage you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Any other public comments, either online or in person? We have one walking up. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Kisa. I live in Ward 1 in Riverdale since 2009. And first of all, I want to thank the council and the town staff because as Allison and many others and the people who are going to follow me, other community members who are going to follow me in making public comments about this issue, it's abundantly clear that decision-making is very, very difficult. It stresses me out a lot, not this particular topic, but other topics. So I'm really empathetic in what town staff and the council are going through. And I just want to say thank you for your commitment to the process. And that's actually what I want to comment on. Usually when I have to make a big decision, I try to step back and think about, center myself in what really matters most. And relationships and values are what matters most to me. And I'm thinking about the fact that there's already residents who won't step foot in this building or the building next to it or near it right now. Legal residents who won't do that. And so I'm thinking about trust, community trust, right? And I'm concerned about what it says about us as a town if we can't even discuss topics and disagree well, right? That's why we go through all of these, motions, second the motion, Robert's Rules of Order, right? Like, is all for the purpose of discussion and good disagreement, right? So I really want to encourage us to not give into fear-based narratives that preclude discussion and disagreement. Even if you and I disagree, right? Most ideas are worth talking about, getting to some facts, right? Except if they disregard someone's humanity or instill violence. So, I've seen hard conversations happen here. I was in this room when we were talking about reducing the voting age to 16. A whole lot of people weren't cool with that. I was in this room when we were talking about allowing all residents of Riverdale to vote. People were not cool with that. We have had hard conversations in here beyond those two examples. So I guess I just want to ask the question, what does it say about us if we can't continue that? If we can't continue that, hopefully, legacy of discussion and disagreement and sticking together, right? And for me, this is a question of which one Riverdale Park do we want to be, right? The one Riverdale Park that there is in Maryland, and that's what that means? Or do we want to be one Riverdale Park that struggles together, right? And talk and wrestles with things together. That's the one Riverdale Park that I'd like to see standing. I would like to see us at least have conversations about these community-based proposals and have a special session to discuss them in depth and elucidate some facts and all sorts of perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good evening. Make sure you turn on your mic. There you go.
Catherine Bergman, thank you to the mayor, council, and staff. I've lived in Riverdale for more than 30 years. And the time I was most proud to live in Riverdale was when we had those difficult discussions about expanding voting rights to non-citizens. And we had the discussion and it was passed. And that's the Riverdale I'm really proud to live in. And I think we're in another one of those moments. So I just want to thank you for what you've done so far and encourage you to consider the community supported proposals and do that soon. We can't wait till August because there's so many families that are going to be impacted from now until then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? If you're online, you can raise your hand. Okay, we'll take one in the room and then Mike, you're next. Good evening. Yes, you're good. Turn on the mic. There you go.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Clark. I'm a Riverdale resident in Ward 3. Over the last 18 months, I've been very, very inspired by a multitude of neighbors I didn't know prior who have come out in the most creative and compassionate ways I can imagine to respond with empathy and care to our community, to establish mutual aid networks, to spend time keeping their eyes on our community and our surrounding communities. So I would love to see the same kind of tactical, clear, policy-driven choices made by this council, and I thank you for things you've already adopted. But I would love to see this council move to act swiftly on the 6 legislative proposals that were made at the last meeting and move those forward as quickly as possible as they are. And to do that, as others have said before August, we need an emergency session at the earliest possible time to establish very clear policies that, like my colleague said over here, would benefit everyone, not just the immigrants in our community and the rest of our community members, but also anyone who's trying to uphold those policies to make sure that there's clarity in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Council member.
just to clarify one thing, since it's come up a couple times now, our next legislative meeting is not currently scheduled till September 14th, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
But the ability to call a legislative session is something that we can do. Mike, your hand's raised. You're next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Apologies, I can't be joining you all in person for this. We are in the throes of bedtime here. Mike Moran, resident of Ward 1, and while I may not have been here in the town for as many years as some of my other neighbors here, I want to lend my voice in support of the community-generated proposals and strongly encourage that an emergency session be held so that it can be more thoroughly discussed and hopefully, properly adopted. I really want to emphasize that while this is a lot of discussion that needs to happen, it is an emergency for our neighbors. It is an emergency for people in our community. So we should treat it like one. This is a moment and opportunity for action beyond just, words. So I ask the mayor and council to sincerely consider that emergency session so that they can be properly reviewed, discussed, and we can take action on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with bedtime. Any other comments from public comments?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, fellow residents. My name is Heather Kronk. I live in Ward 1 and same exact time as Abby. I've been here since 2009. I want to just say a few quick things. One, I want to thank the council for putting this conversation on the agenda for later tonight. I know we have a lot of presentations and town business that we need to take care of between now and then. I'm hoping as many people as possible can stay for that, but we're taking the opportunity to make public comment now, knowing that not all of us can stay for another 2 to 2.5 hours. So thank you for putting it on the agenda and putting public comment, keeping public comment early. I want to repeat everyone's sense of urgency that they've expressed tonight. As Councilmember Smith mentioned, there's a work session in August, but not another legislative session until September. That puts us at basically 3 months until any real action can happen if we don't have an emergency session. So I really want to encourage the mayor, to call for that based on the conversation that happens later tonight. I also just want to offer that the 6 proposals that the community generated and that my Councilmember Smith is going to put forward later are not revolutionary. They're not radical. They're not leftist talking points. Other municipalities across the country, in this area and across the country, have done all of those things. So we did some research because no one else was doing it. And I want to just make clear that there is precedent in other municipalities for doing all of these things. So recommendation 1, that town staff do not assist ICE in any way, not just not helping with enforcement, but not assisting in any way. Tacoma Park has done this. Mount Rainier has done this. Allentown, Pennsylvania has done this. Many other places across the country have done the exact same thing. The proposal for town staff to request to see a signed federal valid judicial warrant before anything happens in order to have access to anything. Alexandria has done this. Richmond has done this. Montgomery County has done this. It is very far from radical to ask that ICE actually do their job and produce a warrant that is signed by a judge, that is not faked, that is not forged, that is not copied. The proposal to prohibit town property from being used for federal civil immigration enforcement. The county, our own county, has done this. They are in the process. They've done that at the county level. They have made recommendations to every entity within the county, the park system, the library system, the community college system, to do the same thing. Philly has done this, lots of other places, Chicago, LA. The proposal to have a liaison to the community, to have someone who's talking to us, who we can talk to, it's not reliant on me texting people or emailing folks trying to get a conversation going. Baltimore has done this. Cambridge, Mass has done it. Fresno has done it. Loads of other places have a process in place, a structure in place for town staff and elected officials to connect with community members. That's not just a one-off. That's not just one person having that conversation. And then our final request to establish a fund that, as my neighbor Kathy has made a great case for, we have funds within the budget in the social concerns. I think it's called Social Concerns Fund. We need to go well beyond that. As she mentioned, the community, not just Riverdale, but the community in this area has raised $300,000. That's just in money. It's not even the people who are buying diapers and formula every single week for people who have nothing right now. We have to step up in this moment. This is what government is for. This is the moment to fucking do something. Baltimore has done this. Santa Ana, California, Anaheim, so many places are using every tool at their disposal to step up right now. We're doing everything we can. We need this entity to do the same thing. I hope you'll consider the proposals tonight. I hope we'll pass them in an emergency session as soon as possible. I still have faith this council can do something. I hope you prove me right.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none online. Any other public comments in the room? Again, hold on one second. Yes, Sean Shannon wrote in the comments that I'd like to strongly voice my support for the community proposals to support and protect our immigrant neighbors, and to call an emergency session if needed to discuss them expeditiously. Our neighbors are being kidnapped and terrorized daily. We need to support from our town and leaders. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. With that, we'll close public comments. I appreciate everyone for providing them. Next, we have 2 presentations. The first is the second phase of the University of Maryland and St. John's Property Flex R&D project. We've got Ed McGinnis, Assistant Vice President of Real Estate from the University of Maryland. Just turn it on. Press the button. There you go.
Oh, green is the right color.
Green's good.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Inyang, mayors of, or members of the council. Ed McGinnis, Assistant Vice President for Real Estate at the University of Maryland. We're here tonight to give a presentation regarding the second phase of an existing Flex R&D development that St. John Properties built for us. It's surprising we're coming up on 10 years now at 5600, 5650 River Tech Court. With me today is Sean Dorden. Sean Dorden is a Senior Executive Vice President with St. John Properties. And in the room with me today is Ken Finley. He's the Vice President for Development at St. John Properties, and Rachel Leitzinger, a civil engineer with Dewberry, to answer. I told them to answer any hard questions that might come up as a result of this presentation. I do want to emphasize, and we can move up one slide here, please. Oh, that's doubly helpful. Thank you. I do want to emphasize that we're here with St. John Properties in a long-term partnership relationship. I think it's important to point out that one of the reasons why we like working with St. John's and we consider them to be a good partner is they are a long-term investor. And we are here in the Discovery District for the long term. I'm going to talk a little bit later when we get on about things that are happening in Discovery District, a general briefing of the things, and by the things, I mean a lot of things that are happening, one of which is this phase 2 project. So with that.
Can we bump to the next slide, please?
Slide, please.
Great. Good evening, everybody. As Ed mentioned, my name is Sean Dorden with St. John Properties. And again, we're going to do our best to be respectful of time, but also provide the appropriate education and address questions real time. If anything I am sharing, there's a question, please feel free from anybody just to reach out. This is now my second time having the privilege of coming amongst obviously a new council and new mayor, but 10 years ago had the same privilege. And the product is existing just down the street that we would hope to, expand upon what we've delivered here, hopefully in a very respectful way with the community. So with that, I do think it's important to share who we are as a company. The University of Maryland is a known entity. In fact, the owner of our company and the chairman is a graduate of the University of Maryland, but just by means of background, as I see these slides are very hard to see for those in the audience, but I've intentionally giving more slides than I'll speak to such that you have access if there's any time, now or anybody that has access to these wants to look in and learn a little bit more. But some of the highlights there, as a company, we've been around for 55 years. We're privately held. We are located in Baltimore. The vast majority of our portfolio, of our 25 million square foot portfolio, again, that's a metric how we measure size and scale. So we like to say is we're the size and the scale of what would be a publicly traded company in the real estate world, but we're privately held. We live here, we care about the community, and we're not what they call merchant builders. We emphasize that and evidence by that matters. We care about your community, our community. We have product here, we have clients here / tenants here, employees here, et cetera. So it is unique how we operate, unlike some of the other folks that are maybe more in and out. The other thing I mentioned is that we typically do everything we strive for has a sustainability, a leadership, a LEED certification. And we have, so in light of time, I'll keep us moving here. So next slide, please. From a tenure perspective, I have had the privilege of being at the company 21 years, Ken 10 years, and we're in many regards newbies here, right? So there's extreme longevity at the company. We are, as I mentioned, environmentally friendly, long-term ownership. We're very fortunate to have a relationship with the University of Maryland. And let's go to the next one. This is important. So what I'll take, we operate different. So what we did here is we were able to expand upon an existing relationship. Ken from a land development is a professional engineer tied to kind of our consultants that we lean on. We would then build the buildings. We do that all in-house. We would service the general contractor. We would handle all of the leasing, the marketing, the interior design, the space planning, the property management, the maintenance. So it's a one-stop shop that we can cater to any of the clients within the portfolio. Okay, next slide, please. This I'm going to skim by, but I guess the evidence as far as much as we're in 13 states, the vast majority of our portfolio is here. In the county alone, we have 5 projects that currently total over 2 million square feet. Next slide, please. The takeaway here, the product that we envision to deliver is in that yellow category. So it's 60% of our 25 million square feet is in fact the product that we would envision to deliver here. This is a little bit more of a fun slide because this gives you a representation of, if you don't care to drive up to what was the old Airco site, this is the type of product that we would deliver. It's everything is speculative, meaning we would build them. These are not build to suits. We would build them and then we would lease them accordingly by the nature of the uses. So there's tons of inherent by the name flexibility as far as how we would, what we call demise, separate the space, clearance, the product. Next slide, please. You can see your aesthetics matter to us. So brick on block, year-round irrigation, year-round green, amenity areas. I think we did a nice dedication to the Airco facility previously. So there's things like that we absolutely take into account. We do screening such that you can't see direct visibility into the truck courts. So it's a matter of that we care what these look like. We care who occupies, because at the end of the day, as a long-term owner, if we were to just put folks in there that don't kind of collaborate or create an ecosystem that works, we will then bear the brunt of that type of relationship. Next slide, please. Tons of versatility to what we may see in these type of buildings, evidenced by our existing clients within the multitude of buildings. Light manufacturing, assemblage, scientific research facilities, government, office, retail, daycare. There's a whole litany of uses that have really been that we benefit from having this type of product. Next slide, please. The highlight here is this just gives a shot of, if we were to build out a space, the total flexibility that a client, a business owner, local, national, whoever may have, to be able to say, maybe I need 10% to maybe I need 100%. So there's tons of versatility built into this type of product. Next slide, please. And then with that, okay.
You turn it back to me. I had said earlier that I wanted to give some context about what's happening in the Discovery District. I will share with this council that I'm now creeping up on 19 years at the University of Maryland. And this was originally the M Square Research Park. It started slow. It's not going slow now. The pace of activity and the nature of the activity in the Discovery District, much of which is in the town of Riverdale Park, is absolutely genuinely exciting and daunting in some ways. So I want to and I mean that. So I want to give a little bit of context as to what's happening right now, why it's happening. And I think that will give some context as to the importance of adding this 58,000 square feet to the portfolio that fits into the Capital of Quantum initiative. So I think it was about 18 months ago, Governor Moore announced the Capital Quantum Initiative. He described it as a landmark public-private partnership that will catalyze, this is an economic development, $1 billion in investment, not all of which is public, much of which is private, and cement Maryland as a global leader in quantum information science and technology. This is a really important initiative, economic development initiative, a tax-based creation, a jobs creation initiative, that is a core to the state's mission, and we're excited to be part of it. I know that I saw some of you at the fairly recent groundbreaking of the Arliss building, which is part of our COPT Defense Properties joint venture. That's a 111,000 square foot office building. I've been told, I didn't verify it, but I've been told, and it seems logical to me, that it's actually the only office building under construction anywhere in the DMV, and it's happening in our Discovery District right now. The university also acquired the building at 5700 River Tech Court at the very beginning of this year. That building is literally the hub of the Capital of Quantum Initiative, and we are using the space available in it to attract quantum companies, the lead company of which is Microsoft Corporation, which is now physically present in Riverdale Park. We have leads on other, and these are some global companies, high quality quantum companies that are looking to invest here. And I want to emphasize that here is the state of Maryland, and the state of Maryland is using this inventory and is using Riverdale Park to compete with other states because there are competition among the states for primacy in this field. What does 5700 Rivertech Court give us that some others don't have? Available space that we can use, that we can leverage, that we can use to attract high quality companies that will invest privately in this area in the state and bring jobs to our area, including the town. That's why it's really exciting. There's a lot going on, and it's cumulative and it's building on itself. The final thing I want to talk about what's happening in this ecosystem is part of the state's Capital Quantum Initiative involves the state's participation in an investment in the new global headquarters of IonQ Inc. IonQ, very briefly, is a company that was started with the participation of the University of Maryland faculty member. It started very small. It kind of started as a startup. IonQ today, as measured by market capitalization, that is the value of its stock, is now the 5th largest company in the state of Maryland. And we want to keep it right here in the Discovery District. It's not all going to go in this facility, but this facility gives us the ability to create that environment where we, again, have the inventory to attract and retain these companies. Next slide. And I think I'll go through the next few of them fairly quickly. Again, I'd mentioned before, this is just a reminder of where the existing St. John properties are. The R&D space, as I call it, is the 2 properties at 5600, 5650. That's the flex space that you can adaptively reuse. I'll only point out the College Park Academy, and I think it's on another slide. We'll see some pictures of it. Next slide, please. By way of example, part of the advantage of showing what phase 1 looks like is it gives a good illustration of what we're anticipating with some modifications. We're going to do some enhancements at phase 2. But you see what the product is, and you see what it serves. I know some of you actually been in the space. You get an idea of the high bay. We keep using the word flexible, but that's literally what it means. It can be a school. It can be a laboratory, it can be an office, and it can be retail too, because I do want to emphasize that it's going to be at the Purple Line station. So I think logically the marketplace is going to bring retail, small retail, right to the transit station. Again, a mix of use in what is going to be built out as a mixed use environment. Next slide, please. College Park Academy. College Park Academy, as you know, is a charter school that was begun with the participation of the University of Maryland as a sponsor. I know that key university leaders still sit on its board. We actually we were just there about a month ago working with the school. They're a partner, and I think they're a key part of this community. Next slide, please. And this is our final slide. This is just a site plan of the locations of the new phase 2. You can see how it's laid out. Again, as I said before, it's about 58,000 square feet. And we've given you the illustration of what it looks like. We're excited, not just by it, but by everything that's happening in our environment. We're moving to a mandatory referral hearing before the planning board on July 30th. And we would very much love to do that and the other things we're doing in the Discovery District with the town's support. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate that. Any comments or questions from council? I guess, Councilmember Worsnop, you posted something in the chat. You want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you. I should have raised this at the beginning of the meeting. Apologies. As an employee of the university, I am just going to observe this part of the meeting and won't be asking questions, just consistent with my kind of conflict of interest and ethics agreement. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming here tonight. And I'm just going to go over a couple things that I heard along the way that I just want to touch back on. You said in one of your earlier slides about you pointed out your environmental stewardship on your projects being one of the top 5 in at least the nation. Did you say?
For number of, correct.
Yeah.
Number of LEED certified buildings.
Number of LEED certified, you're in the top 5. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hope along the way in the discussions that we have, in terms of what you want to put up there, that you'll have the patience and fortitude to work with us, and maybe we can get you to be the top LEED developer in the area. We sure like to help to get you to that. But it's going to take a lot of conversations. The other thing I brought up, and you said that it's an important group, and you like to work with them, and you feel that they're important to the area. That being College Park Academy.
Mhm.
Well, I do hope that you would think that also Riverdale Elementary over here is an important partner to work with, because if you get them inspired when they're young, the kids can just really take off, and I hope you'll be able to approach them, with the same intensity that you'd approach College Park Academy. One thing I'm seeing here, on this last slide, and I know you brought up, with the purple line there and wanting to take advantage of that and leverage it. And I remember attending some of those meetings back when we were having discussions about what was going to be built over at M Square. Back before the NOAA building was built, back when some of the other buildings, before the Crybrary got done, and the other buildings in that area. And I know that there was a lot of push by the group then really to push for a type of development that is less parking lot centric, so to speak. And what I'm seeing here and in this slide, and it's running right by where the purple line is going by, is what looks to be 2 single-story buildings with a lot of parking space around them. And knowing that this area is, you're working in an area that's, you have a, you're working along the Northeast Branch, or if it's not the Northeast Branch, tributary into. Essentially, it's an area where the area needs to be able to expand and swell, in terms of with storms that come in. And I would hope that it is going to be in your best efforts to be able to address what can possibly hit. I mean, it's what can be referred to as the known unknowns. We know we're going to get storms. We know they're going to be intense. We know they're going to be strong. As we're seeing now, these big, large cycles of where there's no precipitation, then all of a sudden there's a massive inundation. It's the smallest slide. I think I'd read something the other day that for the first time, the entire nation, all 48 states, are essentially in a one degree of drought or another. But every state are experiencing drought now. And yet at the same time, we have storms that come in and just drop massive amounts of water, which our soils aren't really prepared to absorb all the way because they're so dry. And I know this is going to really affect how you're going to approach the development. And it gets back to the whole thing about being a good lead developer and being able to have the forethought and vision to be able to look ahead and be able to address these challenges in the future. Because, of course, we would like to see you succeed. Your success would be the town's success. And we'd like to be able to work with you in those ways to be able to have that success. And I just hope that I know you're sincere about this development and having this work well. I just hope, as I think I've spoken with other folks before here, I hope that the university will be a good and working partner with the town, being that Charlie B used to live right over there and founded the whole thing for you. So that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember, thank you. Any comments from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember.
Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here this evening. I want to echo a lot of my colleagues' comments, particularly around the parking concerns and also Riverdale Elementary. I'm sure they're doing great things over at College Park Academy, but their mission is not to take every kid from our community, regardless of what challenges they bring into that school in the classroom with them. RES does that. There, over there. So those children deserve your attention and all of our attention just as much as the kids at College Park Academy. And I hope you'll take that to heart and spend some time working with those students in that school as well. Just a couple other requests. One, you have a really great, the first slide here. Where'd it go? I don't need to see it. A great water feature there. I would just encourage you to permit recreational fishing in that area. And then secondly, I would ask that as you guys announce these investments that are coming to our town, which are great, and I'm excited about them and the cutting edge nature of them. If you could put a word in with the PR folks to make sure that they mention those places are in Riverdale Park rather than Greater College Park or on the UMD campus, we would really, really appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments from council? I've got a few thoughts. One, I think the last one echoed that as well. I know part of the Discover Maryland district, the rebrand, all for it. I know we're sensitive to the disappearing of the Riverdale Park brand, and so we want to actively participate in that. And so I'm glad you talked about stormwater management. I know the last time we came in front of the council, that was a concern, especially with the parking lots. And so did you ever get sort of clarity in terms of would this comply with like the county stormwater management proposals?
So
requirements?
we, the university, tasked Dewberry and St. John property with taking a look at both the MDE and the county and applying the more stringent of the two of them. And that is what they've done. It was explained to me that actually MDE in this circumstance is the more stringent of the two.
Okay.
And I've asked them to have the math to show that if asked. So
okay,
not tonight, but that was the task, understanding that it is of paramount importance to all of us collectively.
Thank you. Other comment was around just in terms of like a property tax and structure. It's similar to the other properties there, right? Because I know for those who don't know about some of the property taxes, if the university owns it, then they're tax exempt.
So the property is now tax exempt because it's owned by the state of Maryland. But when it is leased to the joint venture and built, then the lease becomes taxable in the same way that the town is now benefiting from taxes at the two others. So this will generate taxes to the city. I need to see what the assessment is to figure out what that will be, but it'll be roughly what the value of the improvement is, which is $13 million.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if you knew offhand right now how much it'd be. That's great. And then I think the last thing is, I know the capital of Quantum obviously is one of the bigger investments. I know the governor has been a big proponent of, and I'm excited to sort of see the 5700 River Tech Court building sort of, be used and gaining momentum. I would encourage you to think of how we name that building, and we can throw Riverdale Park's name on there in some ways. I'm open to that, but I say it in jest, but I think just the opportunity of sort of having just same way I think the Arliss building as well is going to be sort of a marker in the community that people know. I think it'd be important to also have another building name that people can also point to than just the street address. And so, but excited about the opportunity and appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Okay, gentlemen, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you also very much.
Okay. Next up, we have the staff recommendation regarding the parking agreement requests on the town center parking lot. This is tied to the. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Director Shelton will be walking through this.
Okay. Thank you, Director Shelton.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This presentation concerns the Lofts East development at 4701 Queensbury Road and a request tied to how the project satisfies its parking requirement. I'll walk through the project requirements, the options available to the council, and the staff's recommendation. And at the end, there will be a clean decision for the Mayor and Council. So as a quick reminder, the Lofts East is a mixed-use project by RTC Partners. It's received LMUTC conditional approval, and the issue before them is parking. The site itself has no on-site parking, and the project carries a 12-space requirement, 7 commercial and 5 residential. That requirement must be satisfied before a building permit can issue, and the developer's attorney has submitted a written request asking the town to enter an agreement that would let the project use town spaces to meet the parking requirement. Any agreement obligating parking spaces requires council authorization, and that's why you're receiving this presentation today. So, orienting you on the map, the purple parcel is the development site itself, 4701 Queensbury Road. The green parcel west of Rhode Island Avenue is also owned by the developer and is currently exploring redevelopment options. The yellow and blue are the town-controlled areas. The yellow is the public Rhode Island Avenue spaces on the street. 10 of them are usable, and the blue is the main town center lot by the MARC station, which the town owns. Those are the pieces that would require an agreement and council approval if we go that route. So if the town were enter an agreement, it's worth being clear on what the county ordinance requires. First, it has to be a written agreement between the town as the lot owner and the RTC Partners as the served user, and it has to be a recorded parking lease. A revocable license doesn't satisfy the ordinance. And second, a 10-year minimum term. That's the floor set by the county ordinance. And it's not something that we can negotiate down. It also requires extension provisions. And third, it has to be recorded in county land records before a permit can issue. And fourth, it runs with the land and it binds successors and assigns, so a future council inherits this commitment for the term. And that's the weight of what an agreement would mean. So for context on the public parking side, the town center has already lost 15 spaces through the town center redesign process. An agreement for 12 spaces would reduce this again to only 51 parking spaces. Feedback from businesses and property owners has been mixed. During the outreach portion, of this review, staff learned that some of the opponents of reducing the total number of spaces from 78 to 63 during the redesign last summer were now in support of the reduction to 51 spaces for the Lofts East project agreement. And with that said, some of the businesses and property owners did have concerns about further reducing the number of available spaces. And so here are the 3 town options. The option 1 is the developer solution. The developer satisfies the 12 spaces using their own adjacent lot on the west side of Rhode Island Avenue. This would mean no town agreement or public parking committed, and the town would preserve full control over their parking spaces. And this is the staff recommendation. If the council does want to pursue a town agreement, option 2 is the more flexible option. The town provides access to 12 undesignated spaces via a recorded lease, and no specific stalls are locked down. 10-year minimum and compensation or community betterment would be required by the developer. Option 3 designates specific stalls for the development's use. It would require signage. It works against our turnover and time limit parking goals to encourage more customer parking in our town center. So this is the last slide, and the staff recommendation again is option 1, the developer solution. The core of it is simple. The developer owns the property on the west side of Rhode Island Avenue and can satisfy this requirement without the town. While staff are excited about interest in the town center from developers, we don't think the town should commit public parking and bind future councils for 10 years or more when the applicant has a viable alternative on land they already own. So the council is asked to direct one of two things: either option A, drop the matter, the town will not enter into a parking agreement, and the developer it will need to satisfy the requirement on their own property or through other means. And that's the staff's recommendation. Or option B, staff will work with the town attorney to draft a parking lease agreement to come back to council for final review and approval. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Hermer, I'll actually ask you a couple of questions specifically, so I'll give you an opportunity to speak because I have some questions for you as well. But first, does the council have any comments to Director Shelton?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember.
With regards to the 3 options, I'm not sure if you can scroll back up to those. Do I understand correctly that number 2, option 2 here, would be that would prohibit us from introducing metered or timed parking to any of those undesignated spaces for the duration of the agreement? Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. So we would have to leave or reserve at least 12 spaces in this case to no longer have a meter. We wouldn't be able to meter those 12 spaces. We had to reserve at least 12 spaces for this agreement to remain unrestricted.
Okay. And is the parking minimum, that's a county-wide issue. That is not under the jurisdiction, like Mutsi does not have the ability to waive that. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes, is that this is the county zoning ordinance to specify how many parking spaces are required, and so we're just following the county zoning ordinance.
Understood. I think the root policy or problem here to me is that parking minimums are just bad policy. If there is a way we could get around, or the developers could get around the parking minimum, I think that would be the best solution. I'm hesitant to commit public resources to private use. But yeah, this is a tricky one. I also don't, if there is parking on the opposite side of the street there, that means that there can't be housing on the other side unless it's a below ground garage situation or something like that here. So there's not, it doesn't seem to be great options here either way, which I guess, that's the nature of the business that we deal in trade-offs. I'm eager to hear other council's thoughts on this, but I think it might not be possible. The best way to be possible would be, or to go ahead would be to find a way to get around the parking minimums, because those are bad policy. But otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm interested in other council thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments from council? Councilmember.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shelton.
Yes.
Could you expand on the point you made about your interviews with businesses in that area? You said the response was mixed.
Yes. So previously, last summer, we had conducted a lot of outreach based on the town center redesign process. There was a lot of concern in the business community, specifically in that town center area, about losing parking spaces, potentially parking spaces that their customers would be using. And so this time I made sure to reach out to all of those same folks again. And some of the folks that had concerns previously were less concerned about this parking agreement than they were the redesign. So I'm not sure the cause of that may have been, but it seems as though they were less concerned about the agreement with the lofts this time around, the reduction in parking spaces. But with that said, some of the feedback did still have concerns. Some of the property owners and some of the businesses still did have concerns.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Absolutely. So I conducted business outreach again and property owner outreach to the businesses and property owners in the town center area that had provided feedback during the redesign process. And some of the there was a much concern, I guess, a lot of concern among the property owners and the business owners in that area. And this time it was more split. I would say there was some of those folks that were concerned before were less concerned now or not concerned.
Okay, but some were less concerned, but you said others were still just as concerned?
Yes, there were some businesses and property owners that were concerned about the losing additional spaces.
And that's the reason they gave you?
Yes, the reason that they gave was they were already tight on parking and they were concerned about further reductions in parking.
Okay. Okay. One other thing, in looking at this approach, and I think this touches on what my colleague has brought up. Is there because of the fact that we have a MARC station within walking distance, we have several bus stops within walking distance, and now the way that WMATA is essentially realigned bus routes, these are bus routes that are going to various different areas, and not just what was previously the Silver Spring to New Carrollton line. Because of those factors in this area, is there any overlay zoning type that can be applied for and then possibly granted that would lessen the parking requirements?
I know that if this same project was proposed further away from the train station and further away from transit-oriented areas, then this would actually have a higher parking standard. Right now, it's already the reduced level, the 12.
So
it would
this
be higher.
Is the absolute lowest.
That's yes. Without planning board intervention, I believe so.
Okay. So essentially, reapproaching, going before the planning board again and asking for a reduction or a waiver based on those factors is what you're saying wouldn't be feasible.
We could certainly send some sort of letter to the planning board requesting them to do so. I'm not sure how successful that would be. I would say it's probably not, but we could certainly try that route as well.
It never hurts to ask. I know that. Yeah, those are my two main questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Worsnop.
Thank you. Director Shelton, thanks for this presentation. On the second option, the flexible town agreement, I'm just wondering how that gets kind of implemented or enforced. Like if somebody in the building, couldn't find a space on a given day, is that like monitored by the town? How does that work?
That would be part of the agreement, but I believe that the specific spaces there would have to be monitored by the town. I think that we would just need to have at least that many unrestricted spaces reserved for the development's use. So if we were to switch to meter parking or some other sort of time limited parking, we would not be able to do so for that number of spaces. But I guess it could be part of the agreement that there would be that the developer would permit the parking or somehow or something along those lines. But yes, in general, that's how that would work.
Okay, and would the lease include an exchange of resources?
Yes, there
Like
would
from the
be
developer? Okay.
there'd be either a compensation or a community betterment requirement. So that could be something like a public restroom for people going down the trail or something like that. Some sort of community betterment, maybe
Okay.
bike racks or something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, Mr. Shelton, the option B, there would be 12 spaces. We would have to leave 12 spaces untimed, unmetered, or whatever for the duration of the agreement. But the folks that would live in this prospective development wouldn't be entitled to those spaces. If they come home and the spaces are full, it's, find somewhere else to park. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
That's my understanding as well. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate any other comments from council. I have a couple I have a couple of questions. And so, Mr. Herman, I appreciate you being present, both of you. My first question is to the earlier point about the other property on the other side of Rhode Island Avenue. I know when this was first discussed, it was part of like a two-phase approach in terms of like a larger project where the green parcel that we see here was going to have an underground parking facility. My question is, wasn't the plan to sort of serve parking for the purple lot development, Lost East, as part of the green development's parking requirement?
Actually, it was not. If I could, Mr. Mayor, there are a number of things that have been stated that are actually not true, and I think it would be really important to clarify that. But let me say that when the MUTC committee approved this 2 years ago, the expectation was, and you see it on report page 39 there in the staff report, it anticipated that there would be a shared parking agreement. That's actually what it stays in the staff report. So it was anticipated that it was not going to be on the serviced by the adjacent parcel across the street. That may have been potentially an option if there was going to be underground parking, but the reality is, as I will explain subsequently, there is not going to be underground parking. That multi-use family or multi-family development across on the what was described as the Lofts West is not going to happen. It can't happen. There's a whole bunch of reasons it cannot happen. It won't get approved and it won't get financed. And I can lay into that if you want right now. But those spaces were not intended to be used for the parking necessities for what they thought was 14 spaces, actually only 12 that's required.
Okay. So you're saying that these 12 spaces now that we know they're 12 spaces, this project always had to sort of self-solve for them, regardless of what was happening on the Lofts West, the green parcel development.
When it went through the MUTC committee, it definitely anticipated that there would be a parking agreement, and in the shared parking, it anticipated that. It's in the staff report. They saw that this was likely going to be happening because they knew that. Remember, the building was standing at that time. It was before the gentleman had a heart attack and died driving a bus that knocked the building down. Councilmember Lingua, I want to make sure you're aware the building was standing. This is the old bookstore that people refer to. And then as the approval came in, that's when there was that.
There was somewhat of a structure.
Yeah, in any event, it was severely structurally damaged in a way that it was not structural integrity was not sustainable at that point. In any event, but there was no parking on the site at that time, and that was going to be essentially the footprint. And but there was no place to put parking, nor is there today to put parking, and also to have that footprint or even any semblance of that footprint used. It's a very small footprint already, as many people know.
Okay, I'm curious what your recommendation would be. But if you have a few minutes that you want to say something, you can.
Yeah, I do. And I want to just make sure I understand. First of all, I'm Michael Herman. I thank you for this opportunity. I have the privilege and pleasure of representing RTC Partners. Carl and Lisa Granzow are here. They're part of the RTC partnership. They are not the only partners that are part of this. And it is true that they have control over the Lofts East parcel, as identified here as the purple space on that diagram, as well as the green space, what we call the Lofts West. In a moment, I'll have Mr. Granzow show you what has been presented to the MUTC recently in the last couple months about the proposed development of the green parcel, what was referred to as the Lofts West, and why we are going to be asking at the end of all this discussion for the council to go with option 2. But we want to explain how we get there. And we want to, I think I want to correct a few fallacies that, or a few misconceptions that have been put forth. The town staff, as you know, has recommended against entering into the parking agreement with RTC, the owner of the Lofts East property. Unfortunately, I believe this flies against the intent behind the MUTC, which envisions fewer parking lots, more dense development. In fact, just a few years ago, the town fought very hard during the zoning code revisions in Prince George's County to retain its MUTT designation to have continuing authority over that area. The MUTC envisions less parking than conventional zoning, has been pointed out already, to create pedestrian-friendly, transit-oriented, more dense development in the town center. It's absolutely true that the property owner must have a parking agreement or off-site parking in place to meet the theoretical needs. And I want to say theoretical because I want to specify where really people are going to park. The theoretical needs for its 12 parking spaces before the project can move forward. That's the law. It is the rules of the MUTC. There was never going to be on-site parking because the building that existed in 2024, as I previously stated before the bus went through it, had 0 on-site parking, and a lot size was too small to ever have on-site parking. Very akin to all the development of the west side of the train tracks, which, and some of those people are online tonight to speak in support of this project. Not one of those businesses has suitable on-site parking. If those existing buildings were built today, they could not be approved by the town without entering into parking agreements, as is being requested here. This very project, which has 2,100 square feet of commercial space on the first floor with 4 residential units above on the second and third stories, will add approximately $2.5 million in enhanced property value for the town lot, generating at least $19,000 per year in new tax revenues to the town. Here we were just talking about a 58,000 square foot development, going to be spanking new, and it's going to look beautiful. And it's unclear whether how much or how many revenues are actually going to come in from that. But this is actual hard dollars that the town will be able to spend. It meets the goals, this project meets the goals of creating both commercial and additional residential units in the town center. One would normally expect that a town says to a business that says we're business friendly, they'd be very amenable to such a development. Previously, it was a rundown, as people are very familiar with that building. It was a dilapidated building, and now it will have a new look, feel, and scale of the remainder of the town center. It's a good project, good for the town, good for the residents. The very project was before the MUTC and received nearly unanimous approval of the design on February 7th, 2024. On page 39 of the staff report, it envisioned that the parking to be off-site shared parking lot to be within a quarter of a mile, and it also advised that the town shall maintain an inventory of shared parking facilities, of which there is only one. The town lot on the west side of the MARC station. It was also envisioned that the town lot would be the place for such shared parking, since there was no allocated parking for any spaces on the lot. Early in the process, I had requested, when I say early in the process, when we approached the town staff in April, when they pointed out that they could not get a building permit until this parking issue, parking agreement is resolved, we had requested very early to receive a copy of the inventory maintained by the town as required by the MUTC. And of course, there is none, except that one was somehow provided tonight that, you know, what the number of spaces are that exist, but there's not an inventory of any designation. In other words, that any of those spaces are previously allocated or promised as is envisioned in the MUTC. The research shows that there are no parking agreements. No business has any specific number of spaces on the town lot. The report, which recommends against approval of the parking agreement, has a very important fallacious assumption. It assumes that the property owner will have the capacity to satisfy the 12 parking spaces by placing them across, and Mr. Mayor, this speaks to the question that you had asked, across Rhode Island Avenue at the Lofts West property. Originally, that southwest corner of Queensbury and Rhode Island Avenue was envisioned to have a multi-story, multi-family development complete with underground parking, which in theory might have been able to create the necessary parking for the Lofts East. Unfortunately, those plans have been abandoned because of a few things. One, the density could not be obtained on the corner to create sufficient units to make underground parking commercially viable or available. As you know, building underground parking is extraordinarily expensive, and you have to have, obviously, the density in order to be able to create that. If this were downtown DC, where, you know, things are worth, you know, $10 million an acre or $20 million an acre, then you have different kind of scenario. In addition to that problem, legislation was passed in the county, as many of you know, that is trying to do something to have certain limitations on rent control issues that have been emanated here. And while very well-intentioned in terms of trying to keep costs reasonable for people living in our county, one of the effect that it has done of doing rent stabilization is it means that commercial banks will not lend to anybody who's building multifamily right now, because they find that it's not viable, knowing that there's a rent stabilization legislation present. So as a result, look around the county, look at the 500 square miles of Prince George's County, and look how many requests there are to build multifamily. You'll be very hard to find any that are moving in any way, shape, or form. As a result, there's no underground parking that's going to be available at that corner. The alternative, which has already been presented to the MUTC, which is now was presented to the MUTC. It has not been presented to the council because it was not relevant until just this evening. And I don't know if the camera could pick it up, but this is the schematic design of 10, and I can pass it up to the council if you want to have an opportunity. But this is, it's to create 10 very high-end, and I can have Mr. Granzow, he is very familiar with the redesign. He can explain.
Actually, Michael Romero, the architect, is on board if he wants to go through it. He can put it up on the.
Michael, are you there?
Yes, sir. This is Michael Romero.
Michael, do you have the ability, can he put it up online, or is it something that has to be done by the town staff?
Probably, but in the interest of time, I think you can just sort of talk through it, I guess. So 10 townhomes instead of the.
It is 10 high-end townhomes with first floor, what they call flex space, which allows someone to have like an office home kind of arrangement as well. It has the parking in the back. There'll be serviced by an alley on the back, but from the streetscape along Queensbury to the back, or where the, I guess, where the alley will be that can be accessed from behind. I think the whole property is only 91 feet in depth. So you can only do so much in that space. In order to create a parking lot over there that could create perhaps a very unsightly parking lot that would go against the grain of what we're also trying to do in the town center, it would probably cost about 3 or 4 townhomes to disappear, and it would create an unsightly lot. But it's also not necessarily making then it makes the other lot not commercially viable to develop, because what you're dealing with now is allocating taxable and developable space. In any event, the point that I was trying to raise is that it is not designed with the higher density use now, but each unit will have a parking bay to satisfy the parking requirements for each townhome. So that no additional spaces will be needed for those spaces somewhere else off-site, but there's no way to create the 12 units for the Lofts East. So the assumption that the old Dorsey S&J property will provide the 12 spaces is not viable. The report does not mention, and I think this is important, that there was some discussion with town staff that the town may want to, in the future, create limited term parking in the lot to prevent essentially commuters from parking all day in what might be otherwise the commercial spaces to serve the businesses in that area. We propose that if the town desires to do that in the future, we had a solution. They could just allocate 12 spaces in the lot, not identifying them. In other words, just say 12 spaces are available, but not individually designate them. It doesn't matter whether it goes to time parking. But we said but one of the things that they could do to satisfy the need for the 4 residential units that would be in the lofts was create 4 spaces, perhaps on Rhode Island Avenue, of those 10 perpendicular spaces that go into the Lofts East property, and create those as permit-only parking for the 4 residential units. That way, what you've done is you've allowed all the non-residential users to be able to come and have the same utilization that everybody else has. In other words, any visitor to any business, whether it's in the Lofts East first floor, or whether it's at Manifest Bakery or at any of the other stores along that whole stretch, they will have the same time restrictions that you folks envisioned that you might do to prevent the commuter lot from becoming a commuter use lot. We thought that that would be a good way to satisfy the needs of the statute, satisfy the needs of the MUTC, and then you put that in the appropriate parking agreement, and then you've got a solution. Of particular concern was, we met with the town staff on April 8th. I was simply asked to prepare a parking agreement. I did that. There was no discussion at that time of compensation, and the developer has never said that they're opposed to a modest contribution to do this, but I do want to reference the fact that it is also going to be creating each year a certain amount of revenues for the town. And over the 10-year period that this thing is going to theoretically be in place, it's going to generate over $200,000 of revenues to the town. But there was no discussion, and we presented this in good faith. We were eager for and to have give and take and conversations of what we could do to help facilitate this development. I have been very assertive in my outreach, but never did I receive a request for clarification or modification. Then in early June, an email was sent out to the affected business community. It was the same people that were part of the distribution list for the redesign of the town center parking area. Well, I saw that and they were soliciting input. But I also sent out an email to the same listserv just to say, here's the rest of the story. Just want to make sure that you're aware of it. As a result of the email that was sent out by Mr. Shelton, there are at least 6 or 7 emails that came in by businesses to say, please support this. He even pointed out that some of the people who were opposed to shrinking the size of the parking lot recognize there's a need for developing additional commercial and residential viable use space in and around the town center. And they supported that. In fact, 2 of the people, I think they're online today, and they were prepared to speak in favor of this as well. They also are part of the very community of businesses that rely on that parking lot. But I will say that those emails that came in, people that supported it, Town Center Market, Jim, Ted Spiropoulos, I believe both of them are here online tonight. York Partners, Jeffrey and Gregory York supported this. Manifest Bakery and its owner, Ty Cook, is here tonight. Bruce Warnick was in support. His property requires parking from the town center lot as well. And these businesses rely very heavily for customer parking. We did send out a response and we just wanted to make sure that the most available information was available to everybody. I understand, and the developer understands, the town does not want to make a long-term agreement of 10 years, but the goal of development is to have growth pay for growth. Over the 10 years, this project will generate, as I said, over $200,000 just in property tax revenues alone. There will be at least one new business license that will likely be 2 or 3. Over 10 years, that will generate several thousands of dollars. The additional revenue can be used to pay for multiple police cruisers, retirement benefits for town staff, stop signs, tree planting, supplies, staff salaries, new code enforcement vehicles, and so much more. It's not restricted funding. The town often suggests that it has insufficient revenues, and here are revenues being brought to you. The town has requested to see more commercial and residential development. Check and check. In fact, in this year's budget discussion,
Mr. Herman, actually, not the, I think I get your point, right? In the sense of like, there's a lot to be used here. I've got a couple questions that I just want to make sure that and I know council has a couple other questions too. One, Mr. Shelton, what happens after 10 years? Does the parking requirement just go away? Is sort of my first question. And then the second question is, the idea of permit parking being something that sort of satisfies like a parking agreement. Is that something that's been done before? Is that viable?
So yes, I'll do the first question first. So the 10-year minimum term also includes language about having extension requirements or extension provision requirements. So there would need to be a 10-year minimum term, but the lease agreement would need to have extension provisions included within the lease agreement. And then as for the permitted parking, there is precedent in it and areas where this has happened before with success.
Okay, so I have a concern, like I have a personal concern about sort of tying up agreements that council's 10 years in the future can't do. So this is not something where after 10 years is forgiven. We would essentially have to revisit this every 10 years, probably in perpetuity, because I don't see the building going away, right? Is that the best way to think about it?
Yes, 10 years is the minimum. It could be more. We could make it 15, 20, but 10 years is the minimum. It couldn't be shorter than 10 years.
Okay, Councilmember Smith, you had a...
Yeah, to stay on that topic of the permitted parking, does Mr. Shelton or whoever from staff might know, does the council have the ability to do that? I think that's a creative solution that I'm somewhat interested in, but as I understand that provision of our code or wherever it's in, when I've researched before, that involves having a petition that at least half the neighbors on that block have to sign saying, yes, we do want permit parking here. So that would require the developer to get that buy-in from the neighbors and also the permitting, the residents that would be using those permits don't exist yet. So if there is a way to do that, that's interesting to me, but I'm not sure that we can. Is there any clarification on that?
We may need to take a second look at that. I'm not familiar with the exact wordage of the current permit ordinance at the moment, but if we would need to make modifications to that, we could certainly do so.
Sure.
But we may or may not need to do so.
Got you. Then just a couple more things. One, as I said on the MUTC committee as well, and I do apologize due to funerals and other family issues. I haven't made the last couple meetings, but if I recall correctly, and I'm not vouching for the perfection of my memory, but the 2024 discussion, the proposal for a shared property agreement was brought by you guys, by the developer. Several people, including myself, had concerns about that. And the discussion went towards, well, this is a proposal. We're going to make refinements. We'll bring things back to you in terms of the parking thing. So it was not a case where there was agreement with the MUTC committee that that was a good idea. Some folks supported it, other folks didn't, but it was not ratified by MUTC, as I recall, if my recollection is correct. And then second, as we listen to this, like, as mentioned, this is a delicate balancing act, right? Where housing inventory is one of the most pressing issues we face as a community. And then rules like this like parking minimums are like the thing that keeps housing inventory from increasing, and housing inventory is the only thing that makes the cost of housing go down. The other side of that being we have to devote public resources to private use. I'm increasingly more sympathetic to the argument that we need to increase our housing inventory. But what gives me pause is sort of the pushback on a betterment agreement or some sort of community investment, because we can't, trying to think of how eloquently to say this, but like stuff's not free, right? I would expect to see a robust betterment agreement, not a modest one, if I were to support the second option. So that's sort of where I'm at. And I also think this might need some more thinking than just the two options presented here. And I do thank the staff team and Mr. Shelton for preparing these and distilling it down for us. This looks to me like a new presentation format. I just want to say I'm a fan. But I think we need more discussion than just maybe these two options presented in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Does staff have any questions or comments?
Yes. I don't know why my mic is. Jessica's mic. That's better. So a few things, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Mr. Herman and Mr. Grasnow for their presentation. I met with Mr. Grasnow and spoke with him about the original project and that many times over the years. And as the project changed and grew and contracted, I'm referring to the original Lofts West and Lofts East. And we talked about community betterment at that time. So it's not a new concept. So that's something that's been discussed over the years. In terms of finding a way forward, if I can just ask one or two questions of the presenters, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
What's your anticipated price point of these townhomes? Or are we?
Do you have any idea?
The townhomes or the homes in the Loft East?
The townhomes.
Oh, we're way before that.
Okay. But so while you've taken some things to Mutzi or El Mutzi, you haven't developed plans in terms of schedule finishes and figured out and penciled out your price point or anything on those?
No, we just gave them a concept to see if the appetite was there for this change.
Gotcha.
And we're actually putting together a formal application to go through the formal process in
And
the next MUTC committee meeting.
and newer upscale townhomes in the area are selling for anywhere from 550 to 600.
They'll probably be north of that.
They'll be higher than that.
These will be like Bostonian townhouses.
Okay.
With some flex space on the first floor that an owner can rent out or use as a home office, business, something like that.
Okay. So in terms of adding to housing inventory, there's no affordability component to this. These are going to be north of
these to 10. The ones
Okay.
across the street will be affordable.
And so I like math. So if we are north of 600, do you want to say there'll be price point 700?
That's fair.
All right. So so if it takes 3 spaces off the top of your head, and I'm not holding you that, it takes 3 townhomes to provide on-site parking. The tax benefit to the town, what the town would be foregoing there is $15,000 a year to not change the parking and for you all to develop a very nice looking parking lot, because Mutzi is going to require that with landscaping requirements and that. It's not going to be a parking lot as described here this evening. But I really would encourage the mayor and council to ask the staff team to work with the developer and to explore what it would really take in terms of providing on-site parking. And then we can report back to the council whether or not that's a viable option, because we're hearing it's not viable. But
It's not only not viable, it'd be horrifically unsightly for the town center.
Well, I think from a staff perspective, we trust MUTC to enforce the standards, and they're good standards to make sure things are not unsightly. And but I do think that exploring what's possible there is a way forward, and then we can report back to the council. And as Councilmember Smith suggested, perhaps flesh out a different option.
Yeah, I think there are other options that have been discussed around one, the permit parking option as well, I think should be sort of considered. And the idea of like the commercial versus residential, since I guess the 7 commercial spaces, or I believe 7 commercial spaces and 5, the 7 commercial spaces being sort of this parking lot, in the parking lot, not metered, and what those options are. I'm sorry?
They can be metered.
They can be metered. I thought the presentation said those in the parking lot cannot be metered.
I did not understand that to be, and nor as I understand that to be the law. They can be used in the same time limited manner that whatever, but it was more for the residential people because they're going to be more restricted. My understanding, the whole issue was not going to be, it was for revenue enhancement for the town. It was more an issue for trying to create term limited parking because you did not want to have commuters parking there all day, as I understood it. But we are very open, Mr. Mayor. I want to be clear. We were never lacking in terms of the concept of compensation, but there was never a request. We said, we were open and solicitous, saying, what is it's going to take us to get there? And this was the report that came without any asking for any input. I also know that there are a lot of people who are online that wanted to speak to this issue that I know are available. But I don't know what your intention is, because I know that there are many people here to speak on that very issue.
Yeah, I think it's so my recommendation is let's go back. Please share. I think it's what would help the council is sort of the each proposal. A couple of new things were brought up in this meeting. What does great look like for each individual proposal? There's some nuances that were not considered in the initial proposal. I think the questions around, can we do permanent parking when the residents don't exist, is an open question. I think the idea of can we have metered parking for the commercials thing is sort of an open question. And so if we can get those clarified, I think that'd be really helpful. So you have like a tighter, hey, these are I think in terms of council perspective, I think the idea of, further prejudice. I think getting a further robust list of like, hey, these are like the refined, 3 or 4 options or 2 or 3 options, I think is probably the best case moving forward. So any other comments from council? Can we move forward on this? I appreciate you both taking the time. And if you have copies of that townhome thing, if not, then I'm sure you can send it to me later on.
We'll have this.
Mr. Mayor?
Council member.
I want to know how many units going to be on that building?
How many what?
How many units are going to be in
going to be on that building when they are trying to limit the parking lot? How many units? How many residents going to be there?
4 units, council member.
4 units.
2-bedroom units.
Yeah, 4 2-bedroom units.
How many bedroom?
2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms.
2 bedroom for the whole building?
No, 4 2-bedroom units.
Each unit will have 2 bedrooms. There'll be 4 units in the building.
Okay. These residents, how many cars they're going to have for 1 unit?
I think that's unknown, and that's part of the parking requirements, right? And so I think the assumption is that a development like this requires 12. There's no way to anticipate how many. They could have none. They could have more than that.
Because if by law, any apartment complex, they have to have 2 cars. So if the parking lot is not enough for them, what are they going to do?
Yeah. So, Councilmember, I appreciate the comments. I think the law is what we're sort of talking about in terms of the minimum spaces, and so the reason why it is a number, which in this case is 12, is because it's impossible to sort of anticipate exactly how many cars future residents can have. And so what's required is 12. And so it's best that we sort of plan for that 12. Now there's a difference between residential versus commercial. And so it's 5 residential versus 7 commercial spots. And so those are the numbers that we're working with. I think anything else in terms of hype, like, I'm forgetting the word, but assuming or making assumptions in terms of what people will have, it's just, we're not able to do that at this time. I think we'll stick with the 12 because we know that, and that's what the law requires.
Well, I think we have to postpone this talk and bring it in the future meeting so that we can know what to do.
Okay.
Thank
you, Council Member. All right, we're going to move forward. I appreciate everyone who joined in support. Okay, Council Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm just speaking for myself here on this, seeing what's come up here tonight in terms of wanting to move things forward, wanting to come to consensus on a myriad of items here. And I know it's been talked about when we're going to meet next and all this and how we are able to call meetings if we feel we need to. I'm just going to say this right now. A quick look at the calendar says there are 8 Mondays between now and the end of August. I'll make sure I'm available for all 8 Mondays. So as if we need to meet, we'll meet.
Okay, thank you, Council Member.
Mr. Mayor, is there a timeline or anything is anticipated? Because I know we tried to do the building permit back in, months ago, and I know we're not there, obviously, but, contractors are ready to start the work when we can get this thing moving. Do we have a timeline of?
Yeah, it's as soon as we can. I think let's have a conversation with the town and get the updates on that, and we're happy to move forward once we have, I think, all the information to make a decision. This is a great conversation, and we've been able to get further ideas in terms of some of the nuances of this conversation. I understand that you wanted to start it yesterday, and I appreciate that. But I think any agreement that we're sort of, locking the town in for at least 10 years at the minimum has to be considered. But I appreciate you taking the time and voicing your opinions and you're sharing your thoughts. All right.
Thank the mayor and council for the time.
Thank you both. All right. Next, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have a number of meeting minutes from June, May, and a March work session as part of the consent agenda. Hopefully council's been able to sort of review that. And with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Is it motion by Councilmember Linguist, second by Councilmember Foe? We won't discuss the motion. We'll go straight to a roll call vote. A roll call vote on the consent agenda. We'll start with Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Warsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Colon.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 7-0. Okay, we've got a couple legislative items. I got an alert. The U.S. is down. It's halftime. So 2-1 to Belgium, unfortunately. But we'll move forward. So the first item is the motion to authorize the town manager to sign a task order contract with Pannoni to prepare the Purple Line connectivity project.
So moved.
For I'm sorry, I should finish, right? To prepare the Purple Line connectivity project for an amount not to exceed $75,000, reflecting a $9,155 contingency for CIP 26P W03.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, second by Councilmember Colon. Is there any discussion on the motion? I know this is something we've brought up before. I believe this is for the Purple Line neighborhood, which is what we call the community between Kenilworth Avenue and the river, north of East West Highway, sort of below the Rinaldi's parking lot center. That's what we're kind of calling the Purple Line connectivity neighborhood. It's the 54th Avenue, Quintana, Patterson, that neighborhood, which has traditionally had no sidewalks, no streetlights. And so we've been advocating for funds for this for years. We've got some grant funds for this. And so this is the beginning of sort of project task orders around that. Any comments or discussion on this from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Council member.
Just to echo your commentary there, this was a community that had long been neglected in terms of infrastructure for various reasons for a long time. That's before the Purple Line started, which, you know, I've talked to folks from that neighborhood who mentioned it taking, you know, they're driving to work an extra 15, 20 minutes just to get 3 blocks out of their house and onto the highway and in the direction they need to go. So this is essential and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Any other comments from council? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Cologne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 7-0. Next, we have a motion to authorize the town manager to sign a task order contract with Pannoni to design the proposed road improvement projects, both streets and sidewalks, as part of CIP 11P W07. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, second by Councilmember Smith. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. We talked about this in our last meeting about sort of the work that's been done to sort of assess and map out the streets and sidewalks. And so this is part of that, the next step in that process. Okay, seeing and hearing no comments, we'll go to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos. Councilmember Ramos.
Aye. Sorry. Aye.
No problem. Councilmember Cologne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 7-0. Next, we have a motion to authorize the town manager to sign a cooperation agreement regarding community development block grants, CDBG, urban community qualification, which is sort of federal FY 27 to 29. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe and second by Councilmember Lingua. Any discussion on the motion? As you can see, these funds are part of federal dollars as part of the our federal funding program. Okay. Any comments or questions or discussion from council? Okay, seeing none online, we'll go to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Councilmember Foe.
Councilmember Lingua.
Oh, aye.
Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Worsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Cologne.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion passes 7-0. All right, next we have a motion to close the 5,000 block of Queensbury Road for the upcoming Community Night Out event on August 11th, as well as a rain date of August 13th from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, second by Councilmember Smith. Any discussion on the motion? No. Okay. I'll just say that this is something that we did last year, which we did in a different location, right? Last year we did it in the park. This year we're doing it on the 5,000 block of Queensbury Road is right here. So we're bringing it back home. So excited about this, obviously, and in full support of this, both the date and the rain date as well. And this is the 11th, the national night out, or is that a different night?
It's the week following. This allows us to have all the resources that are really spread out on National Night Out. So we are holding it the week after, and then the rain date is within the same week.
Okay, thank you. We did that last year. I think that went over well. Okay. And with that, if there's no other comments or discussion from council, we'll go to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Langua.
Aye.
Councilmember Warsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Cologne.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion passes 7-0. All right, that is our legislative action items. I believe we have no items of sort of unfinished business. We do have a presentation and an item of new business as well. So with that, Ms. Shear, are you online? I believe she is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there you go. Yes, could you please do your presentation? And again, I guess one of the I asked Ms. Shear, who's been our legal counsel, to sort of come and do a presentation, I think for a few reasons. One, for I think the council's benefit as well as the public in sort of getting a legal update and presentation, specifically around a lot of the comments and questions that are coming around sort of immigration enforcement. I think it's important that we all sort of get a primer. I know the space is moving quickly, and it'll be helpful. I thought it'd be helpful to be able to get a grounding, to sort of help us as we have our conversations. And so I'm going to step out, but please continue right now. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for having me here tonight to provide the presentation. As a preface, and that's on the first slide, the presentation is intended to provide a legal framework for addressing issues that have arisen in the town in recent weeks. And the instant presentation is a summary of established or marginally established legal principles with respect to current federal immigration policies and how federal, state, and local governments interact with respect to immigration enforcement in recent times. It's important to note that this is not intended to be an all-encompassing presentation that will address all issues. And then, as immigration enforcement is rapidly evolving area of law, it's not something where anything is really written in stone or completely certain at this point, other than the well-established, principles that I'm going to discuss. And as we all know, legal challenges to immigration laws continue to make their way through the courts as we speak. So this presentation will also address some issues with in relation to the Maryland Open Meetings Act and its exceptions and the town's charter with respect to governmental structure of the town. And then we'll also address some of the council rules. So with that said, I will start with the constitutional principles regarding immigration. The power to directly regulate immigration is unquestionably exclusive federal power. And you can see I'm providing legal citations here to case law from the Supreme Court. And the federal government agency that enforces immigration is obviously primarily ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And the first concept I wanted to talk about is intergovernmental immunity doctrine. And that's a doctrine or constitutional principle that limits the ability of federal and state governments to interfere with one another's governmental functions generally. And then in the immigration context, The Intergovernmental Immunity Doctrine functions to prohibit state and local governments from enacting regulations that unduly burden or hinder ICE's core functions. And so that leads to the counter doctrine, which is the anti-commandeering doctrine. And this is a legal principle that limits the federal government's ability to commandeer state and local assistance with immigration enforcement. And it's based upon the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which bars the federal government from requiring state or local officials, including police officers and correctional officers, to enforce or aid in enforcement of federal immigration laws. The federal government cannot compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program or compel state employees to participate in the administration of a federally enacted regulatory scheme. And the case law is there. Also, the anti-commandeering restrictions of the 10th Amendment extend not only to the states, but also to local governments and their employees. And then the U.S. Congress cannot issue direct orders to state or local lawmakers, and state and local governments can refuse to adopt federal immigration policies, even if the refusal, quote, inevitably frustrates, end quote, federal immigration enforcement. So the authority of federal officials is the next thing to address. Although federal law does not and cannot require state or local officials to assist immigration authorities, federal law does make it a crime to actively interfere with federal officers, including ICE agents. If ICE agents insist on entering private spaces without proper authority, facility staff should not try to stop them. Staff can only withhold their consent. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So unless ICE agents present a valid judicial, which is not an administrative warrant, the agents cannot require facility staff to open locked doors or to otherwise affirmatively assist them in obtaining entry to private government spaces. Not all property owned by a local government, however, is private property, because even though the town owns it, it can still be public property. And an example of that would be a park. So the conclusions we can draw that are very well established are that even if the town would adopt an ordinance, which I'll discuss shortly because you already have one, but even if an ordinance is adopted by a local government, city officials and city employees, including police, cannot interfere with ICE enforcement activities. The other risk you have is that an ordinance you would adopt could potentially be challenged in court. The next thing is that the town, including its police force, may not physically stop federal law enforcement efforts on or in town property. So the town cannot physically stop or interfere with or remove ICE agents. And that also is true regardless of what ordinance you would enact. For instance, the ordinance could say you could do that, but you actually can't. So the other thing to mention is that the town may pass an ordinance designating certain town property as private property and can withhold consent for ICE or other federal immigration authorities to enter that space. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The town and town personnel may refuse consent for ICE's presence, and they're not required to assist ICE, such as by unlocking gates, opening doors, or otherwise assisting ICE in utilizing private town property. So I think this part is a little lengthy because what I wanted to do is let you know what the town's current law regarding immigration issues are, and that's found in the Town Code, Chapter 53, under Police Department. So that starts with Section 53.2, which has definitions. Very important to define what the phrases that you're using in an ordinance mean. And then if you scroll down, you eventually get to 53.9. That is called Limitation on Cooperation with Immigration Authorities. And as you can see, it already provides some of what I said, like, first of all, that the enforcement of civil federal immigration laws is exclusively the responsibility of the federal government, and that the department's officers do not have legal authority to stop, detain, search, or arrest an individual based solely on an administrative civil warrant unless they have been deputized by ICE. Department officers are not permitted to be deputized by ICE for the enforcement of civil federal immigration laws. So that's there. And then in B, it says the department and its officers are limited in their cooperation with immigration authorities in order to, and then it gives some purposes of doing so. And if you scroll down, obviously 5310 prohibits departments or the department or any officer or employee from requesting information about or assisting with obtaining information about status of an individual as far as immigration. And then under 5311, there are specific prohibited actions. And again, like as for instance, in subsection A, no officer or employee may initiate an investigation or otherwise take law enforcement action solely based on the immigration status of a person while doing their work. And it goes on, but I wanted to draw your attention to subsection G, which I highlighted in green there so you can see it. Well, I highlighted it for me, not for you, I'm sorry. But yours is bold. So it says no officer or employee may coordinate with an immigration enforcement official in furtherance of a civil immigration enforcement operation. So I highlighted coordinate with because that means something. It means they can't plan or coordinate with an immigration enforcement official, which is a federal officer, including by number one is permitting immigration enforcement officials access to non-public space within a town facility or any area where town business is being conducted. So permitting means consent, pretty much. So consenting to allow immigration enforcement officials to access non-public, which means private spaces within the town in a facility or any area where town business is being conducted. So this is what it currently says in your ordinance. This section possibly could be reworked because I think there's a little vagueness in what town facility or any area where town business is being conducted. But generally, this requires coordination and consent to give access to a private space by a town officer to ICE. And so that's a high standard. So, but it's the only standard that probably is legal because again, there's a difference between town private property and town public property. And there's a difference between the town, yeah. I'll get back to that because I don't want to get too in depth in the current statute, but I wanted to make you aware that this is what currently is in your code. And now I'll move on to just cover some Maryland state legislation that's been enacted on this topic. Now, you probably all have read about this in the newspapers and heard about it on TV, but Maryland has enacted some legislation. And believe me, I'm not giving you all encompassing actions that have been taken either by, this state or every jurisdiction in the state or every jurisdiction in the county. I'm just mentioning some highlights for you. But in Maryland, they've enacted the Community Trust Act, which became law in May of 2026, and the Maryland Values Act, which was House Bill 1222, effective last year. And the Maryland Attorney General's Office was instructed by that legislation to provide guidance. And the Attorney General's Office has done so, and they post that guidance on their website. And the Attorney General's Office recently released updated guidance in June, I think it was June 22nd, 2026. And I think a handout of that has been provided to each of you so that you can read it for yourselves. It is guidance for police and correctional officers in particular that were covered by House Bill 1222. And those have been codified into the public safety article and the state government article since then. And that provides those two, the Community Trust Act and the Maryland Values Act, provide a really good legal framework for the state of Maryland's non-cooperation with federal immigration authorities. So The highlights, first of the Community Trust Act, it limits local law enforcement and correctional facilities from assisting federal immigration authorities. It's designed to separate local law enforcement from federal civil immigration enforcement. It restricts local police and correctional facilities from inquiring about immigration status or holding individuals on behalf of ICE without a judicial warrant. And local correctional facilities, including the pretrial facilities run by the counties, may not notify ICE of the custody status or provide advance notice of release of individuals without certain criminal convictions, absent, again, valid judicial warrant or court order. As far as state correctional facilities, they must notify ICE within 48 hours after releasing an individual who is the subject of a detainer accompanied by a Form I-205 warrant of removal or deportation. Law enforcement officers generally may not share information obtained in the course of their duties with federal immigration authorities, with limited exceptions for court orders and criminal investigations. That prohibition does not apply to citizenship or immigration status information, and units of state and local government are prohibited from entering into 287G agreements or other agreements authorizing the enforcement of civil immigration laws. There were 3 counties in Maryland that had 287G agreements, and those were terminated when the legislation took effect. So, based on just these general principles that are established regarding the immigration landscape, potential town actions obviously include adopting an ordinance, providing for and defining private property, because it's not in the current code. Although the current code does, as I stated, mention non-public areas, meaning private areas. And so if an additional ordinance were adopted, you could define what is private property, but only certain things can be private property. And then you can exclude ICE from those areas unless there's some sort of exigent circumstances or there's a valid judicial warrant or court order. And I will get to this, but there is Montgomery County legislation and many other, jurisdictions who've now adopted ordinances that make it so that parking garages, ramps, lots are designated as private areas, and ICE is so-called excluded from those private areas. And then the way they're made private is to, one, designate them by law as private, but then to also add fences and padlocks and signs. And so those, if you were going to try to prove to a court that this was a private area, that's how you would do it. You would show your law, you would show the physical manifestations of that privacy, but you could really only do it with certain areas. And that's why there's been a concentration on parking lots and garages. You definitely could not exclude ICE from parks, and you could not exclude them from the town limits. You have no legal basis to do that. The key in such a situation, if you were to adopt an ordinance, would be to ensure that any such ordinance's provisions are likely to be constitutional and withstand legal challenge, but also because that would discourage people from suing you in the first place, but also to ensure it complies with human resources laws and other local, state, and federal laws. I believe an attorney has to be integral to that process, whether it's me or someone else. And I mentioned human resources laws because no ordinance you would enact can require employees to do certain things. So, and we'll get to that. So some jurisdictions have legislated private areas by designation and also with signs and fencing, as I just said. There are Prince George's County, Montgomery County laws that I've looked at. Like I said, this is not all encompassing. I could canvass many number of different ordinances and laws, but You basically can choose to adopt the same provisions. You know, you don't need to recreate the wheel necessarily. The town cannot legally include in such an ordinance a provision banning ICE officials altogether from the town limits. You wouldn't have any basis to do that. Just like, you know, any other person could not be banned from the town unless you had some really, really good constitutional reason. So, moving on, I can throw some examples of ordinances provisions at you, but like I said, I wasn't doing an exhaustive search. I think probably many of you have read about, you know, what they've done in Minneapolis or Chicago. As far as access to city property, the Minneapolis ordinance, which was chapter 19.25, that one has a section in it that has city-owned or city-controlled parking lots, ramps, vacant lots, and garages are not open to the general public without restrictions. No federal, state, or local government entity or personnel is authorized to use any city-owned or city-controlled parking lot or ramp, vacant lot, or garage as a staging area, processing location, operations base, or any other similar use for enforcing federal immigration laws. So that was pretty good at the time, and now it's being emulated, but it's also being challenged in court. Sometimes the DOJ will just ignore these things and go in anyway. And that's a whole nother issue because, like I said, you can't physically interfere with what they're doing. Montgomery County's newly adopted laws also have a provision in section 2-164A that any county-owned or county-controlled parking lot, garage, or vacant lot must not be used for ICE enforcement activities. And I like that language because it includes surveillance, which was missing from the Minneapolis one. Must not be used for ICE enforcement activities, including surveillance, staging, processing, detention, or vehicle storage, unless required by law or authorized by a valid judicial warrant. And so that's, I think, even better because it has that savings clause at the end where it says unless required by law or authorized by a valid judicial warrant. And so, you know, I think each jurisdiction that's addressed it has come up with bigger and better things to make the ordinances better that are drafted. And then Prince George's County legislation, they decided to, they did the 4 different pieces of legislation. Individuals not eligible for county employment. That one might not withstand a challenge because it's saying that if you ever work for ICE or Customs and Border Protection, you can never get a job working for the county. And then the second one listed there is the Community Safe Spaces Act. That one was emergency legislation. To limit the use of county property for immigration enforcement activities and bans federal immigration agents from entering county facilities without a valid warrant or extenuating circumstances, which is the same as exigent circumstances under Fourth Amendment law. I'm just giving you the overall brief description. I'm not providing you with all the language there. They also did a Resident Kidnapping Protection Act. And then the 4th piece of legislation was the prohibition on facial coverings for law enforcement. Now that is probably more of the type of act that they can't enforce, but they do it just to make a statement. I mean, you can pass a law that says, you know, ICE agents can't wear masks, but you have no way of enforcing that, not one that I can think of. So on the next slide, there's a couple more things they did. I think these are the county resolutions, protecting all county public spaces, and the second one, accounting of ICE detainees in Prince George's County. So those were 2 good ideas. Just they're not ordinances, they're just resolutions. And then the next slide has some more information about the Montgomery County legislation that was adopted very recently. So there's 4 pieces of legislation listed there. And Bill 326 is the County Values Act. So just like the state had the no, their Values Act. This is another one. And this one is a formal framework for how the county departments respond when federal immigration enforcement officers come to county facilities and parking lots. And it requires the county executive to issue guidance. And I have a copy of the bill on that one. It has some really good provisions in it. Again, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Montgomery County has its own large team of attorneys to review and provide all sorts of analysis, and I do believe worked in conjunction with the Attorney General's office as well. So, I mean, the information is all here for you. In Bill 526, that's the Unmask ICE Act. It would stop any law enforcement agency operated in Montgomery County from wearing masks or facial coverings while on duty, with some exceptions for the health and safety of the officers. And the bill also requires officers to display and, upon request, verbally disclose their agency name and badge number. So, to the extent this would apply to federal officers who were working for ICE, it would be difficult to enforce because they don't have to comply, would be their argument. Number 3 is Bill 13-26. The ICE Out Act prohibits the issuance of building permits or use and occupancy permits for any privately owned detention facility in Montgomery County. That's certainly been a hot issue. And then Bill 14-26 is the Vehicle Recovery Act, which addresses the process of retrieving vehicles impounded in the county. It actually requires towing companies to accept consular identification cards and a broader range of documentation for the person to establish their ownership and secure release of their vehicle. They don't want that to be another hardship for immigrant families. So, pretty good bill there. And, you know, you can pick and choose what it is you would be interested in or what you would want to do, but these are just some general examples. And so that takes us to the Maryland Open Meetings Act. And I wanted to bring up a few issues with respect to this. So I'll call it the OMA, Open Meetings Act. And it, as you all know, it requires you to have public open meetings, right? But it has a lot of rules within that. And then it also has a lot of exceptions. It has 15 exceptions that permit you to have closed meetings, which are sometimes referred to as executive sessions. It's the same thing. So before closing an open meeting under one of those statutory exceptions, there's things you have to do first. The public body must disclose the particular exception that permits the closed session. You have to give notice of it in your agenda. You have to have an open meeting in order to move to hold a closed meeting. So you don't always have to then, after the closed meeting, move back into an open session. But there's many ins and outs around that. But in the closed session, the attendees can discuss only matters that are within the scope of that particular exception that was invoked. Closed meetings often involve topics that are confidential and or privileged, hence the whole purpose in having the exceptions to open meetings. Therefore, disclosure of information discussed at a closed meeting may waive attorney-client privilege and or subject the person disclosing the information to civil liability because it's intended to be confidential. Related to this, I wanted to mention the Maryland Public Information Act prohibits the release of personnel records. And so that's one of the reasons that you will only discuss personnel matters in a closed meeting and never publicly. So the statute is in the Maryland Public Information Act at section 4-311. It defines personnel records as following. It says a custodian shall deny inspection of a personnel record of an individual, including an application, a performance rating, or scholastic achievement information. That seems odd. It's like sort of what are they talking about? But it's been repeatedly hashed out in case law and in decisions by the Public Information Act Commission. Well, I know I'm saying that wrong, but there's a reviewing commission. So a person may request their own records, of course, and an elected or appointed official may request the records of an individual the official supervises, as long as those records are kept confidential. So that's it. It's right there in state law. And scrolling down. So when getting back to the Open Meetings Act, that provision is in the general provisions article of the Maryland State Code in section 3-305B1. And it defines a personnel matter as a discussion regarding hiring, firing, discipline, or compensation of specific individual employees. So if you're talking about a whole group of personnel, everybody who works in finance and accounting, and it applies equally to them, and you're not going to mention any names, then it's not a personnel matter. But if you're discussing any of those things with respect to an individual employee, then it is. Next, the employee, appointee, or official who is being discussed should not be present in the closed meeting when the personnel matter is discussed. And personnel matters, like I said, should never be discussed publicly. I've seen many a lawsuit filed against individuals who have done so for such causes of action as defamation, among others, constitutional claims even. So you definitely don't want to violate that one. So it's a privacy right of those individuals. There's a risk of litigation that could ensue. And so it's something you do want to completely avoid and keep that confidential at all times. Keep it in a closed session. The next exception to the Open Meetings Act that I wanted to discuss is the legal advice exception. It allows a public body to close a meeting to obtain legal advice. And so as long as the discussion is surrounding the obtaining of legal advice, then it's great. As soon as there's not legal advice under that exception being obtained, and instead the discussion turns to debate, that debate needs to return to open session, and you do that in public. And all the exceptions are construed strictly like that. You have the exception because you need it, but when you're not using it any longer, then you have to stop the closed meeting and return to open session, because the public policy is in favor of holding public open meetings. Okay, next, there are just some decisions I can highlight for you from the Open Meetings Act Compliance Board Manual. This is a manual that's published by the Attorney General's office, and there is a compliance board that makes decisions. I actually had to represent a client before the board, and they do an excellent job. But as explained by the compliance board, the legal advice exception is to be narrowly construed to cover only the interchange between the client public body and its lawyer in which the client seeks advice and the lawyer provides it. Next, the board has stated the exception does not allow for closed discussion among members of the public body merely because an issue has legal ramifications. Next, in short, the compliance board has instructed that once the advice has been sought and provided, the body must return to open session to discuss the policy implications of the advice it received or anything else about proposed legislation. Accordingly, the compliance board has concluded that a city council exceeded the legal advice exception when it discussed the need to have an ordinance drafted, however brief and however devoid of substantive discussion that was. Accordingly, there can be no public debate of council during a closed meeting for legal advice or really for any other exception. You're there just to talk only about what you gave notice of properly in your agenda that you were going to talk about, and that's it. So next, I wanted to make some comments about your town's governmental structure. And the reason I want to do that is because you have a little bit of a different structure than most other local governments that I work with. So you guys, I actually worked with one county that had a similar structure to yours, but no towns. The Town of Riverdale Parks Municipal Charter, which is your constitution, delineates the basic structure of the town government. So along with the provisions of Maryland state law, the town's charter also outlines the power that the town as a municipal corporation may exercise. A municipal charter is analogous to a constitution. And so I wanted to highlight some provisions in your charter. First, with respect to the council, section 201 provides the number, selection, and term, and states the legislative powers of the town are vested in the town council, consisting of 7 council members, with the mayor included. And then section 301 has your general powers. It says all legislative powers that may be exercised by the town under the laws and the Constitution of Maryland are vested in the council. So clearly the council is the legislative body. And then the next section is the mayor, section 205. It says the mayor shall serve as chairman of the council. The mayor may take part in all discussions and shall be a voting member of the council. And then the next section is town manager, section 702. Town manager says in section A, there shall be a town manager who shall have the powers and duties as set forth in section 702C of this charter. The town manager shall be appointed by the council with an affirmative vote of a majority of the entire council. And under section B there, it says the town manager shall serve at the pleasure of the council and his or her compensation shall be determined by the council. The council may provide an employment contract for the town manager, provided that the contract provides that the town manager serves at the pleasure of the council. The council may remove the town manager from office in accordance with certain procedures that are listed otherwise in the charter. And then moving down, I've provided section 702C, which says the town manager shall, and then lists the things that the town manager does. Section 1 is the town manager shall be the chief executive and operating officer of the town and see that its ordinances are faithfully executed and be the head of the administrative operations of the town government. Number 2 is town manager shall appoint and remove all subordinate officers and employees of the town in accordance with the rules and regulations of any merit system adopted by the council. And then it goes on to provide other things that I left there for sake of completeness, but I can skip over right now. The point being is that the town manager appoints and removes all subordinate officers and employees. And he is the CEO for the town. And the mayor and council, while they appoint and remove the town manager, do not have authority over the other subordinate officers. They come under the town manager. If you go down to the next slide, it also states that the town manager prepares the budget submitted to the council, is the chief financial officer for the town, can appoint other individuals, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things, all the way down to number 10 on the next slide, says that the town manager shall be the town's personnel manager unless he appoints someone else. So there you go. I mean, it's very clear that the personnel are supervised and everything by the town manager. On the next slide, you have a section in your charter, section 213, that says interference by council with town manager. This section says neither the council nor any individual council member may issue orders or directions to any subordinate of the town manager. Because maintaining a clear chain of command is important to the smooth and orderly functioning of government, the council and council members may only direct communications with any subordinate of the town manager through the town manager, except when seeking information from or sharing information with heads of offices, departments, and agencies of the town. And so bottom line takeaways with regard to the town's governmental structure is that the council, which includes the mayor, has authority over all legislative matters and has authority over the town manager and town attorney. So it also establishes that the town manager is the head of the administrative operations of the town and the town's personnel manager, for the reasons I just said. And it also establishes council members cannot interfere with the town manager's powers by issuing orders or directions to any subordinate employees of the town. Another document that I reviewed as part of this is the town's mayor and council rules and order of business, and wanted to just point out on the next slide some of the highlights of that. So the rules include a governing style with a clear distinction between the mayor, council, and town manager roles. That's on page 2 of the rules. The rules include a governing style with collective council decisions rather than individual decisions, also on page 2. The rules also include a section D regarding the orderly conduct and compliance with the rules on page 3. That section says that the chair, which is the mayor, shall preserve decorum and will determine points of order. Council members shall have the right to appeal the chair's determination to the council. The chair shall call to order any person who disrupts the orderly conduct of business at meetings. The next section is section G, which states that members of council shall not raise personnel matters pertaining to alleged improper performance or conduct of any town employee or council appointee at a public council meeting. And that really just repeats what I've already said about personnel matters have to be private, shouldn't be discussed in public at any time. That's an exception for a closed session of the mayor and council. Any concerns about the conduct or performance of any town employee or council appointee shall be brought to the attention of the town manager or mayor in the case of council appointees, or a closed session of council may be requested to discuss the matter. That's stated at page 4. These rules obviously comport with what we've already said about the PIA, the OMA, and your charter. So that concludes the presentation. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate the history lesson. And so I think the clarity in terms of sort of look around at least the immediate area, somewhat country as well, in terms of other folks who've sort of gone down some of the similar conversations that we've had as well as some of the rules in terms of what we can and cannot do in closed session, since we're going to be going to a closed session after this. But with that, any questions or comments from council on the presentation?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember.
I don't have a question specifically about the presentation, more about the hour and our rules. Is that in order now, or should we address that separately? Yeah.
What's your about the time?
Just that we still have several agenda items remaining, and continuing the meeting beyond 10 p.m. requires a vote. So if in order, I'd like to raise that now.
Okay. To extend it to.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we continue the meeting for up to 30 additional minutes.
To 10:30.
To 10:30.
Okay. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded. Yeah.
Any discussion on the motion to extend the meeting to at least 10:30?
Got a lot to cover, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll go to roll call vote. If hearing none, Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Cologne.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 7-0. Okay, so we have to 10:30 at least, and then we'll revisit as we get closer to that. Thank you, Councilmember, for that. Okay. Quick question I have, Ms. Scherer, about you mentioned multiple times judicial warrants. Is it easy to read that as like a judicial warrant is for sort of like a criminal complaint, or is it possible to have judicial warrant for just immigration enforcement activities?
For civil federal immigration, they have a practice of issuing their own administrative warrants. And so when I say judicial warrant, I'm talking about a warrant that's issued by a civil court. And so a judge has reviewed it and has said, this is the order of the court, or has signed the warrant. And so that's the difference. I was trying to make the distinction between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant. And then, of course, criminal warrants are a different subject, but yes, it would apply to a criminal warrant as well, signed by a judge, because a civil immigration authority can't sign a criminal warrant.
Correct. Okay. Just it's for my clarification. So I think that makes sense. But so there is an opportunity. There is a possibility that that a judicial warrant could be for civil immigration enforcement.
They can go and get a warrant for civil immigration enforcement. Yes, like for instance, they might have a deportation order, but they don't have a court order saying you can enter the home to get this person and deport them. So what they would need is to go to court, to a federal judge, and ask for a warrant allowing them to enter the home, because obviously privacy laws and the Fourth Amendment are supposed to protect you in your home without an arrest warrant or something else, search and seizure warrant signed by a court of law.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Worsnop?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, first of all, Ms. Scherer, for that presentation. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody does. I also appreciate that you shared some models from other surrounding jurisdictions. Just my question for the moment. You mentioned several terms, right? Unduly burden or hinder, interfere, and then assistance. And are these terms, and they're like are the definitions of these terms in practice settled on, or are these being kind of changed as we speak in terms of what constitutes interference or assistance on the other hand?
Do you have a context? I said unduly burden. Was I reading?
Oh yeah, it was like unduly burden or hinder ICE activities, I think.
Was that written in one of the example
It
ordinances?
was, no, it was from one of the first things you mentioned. I think it was under the case law about how federal, or maybe like federal and state relations, but interference is the one that comes up the most. And I don't need like a specific definition right now, but just curious, like, are these terms agreed upon in terms of what constitutes interference, for instance?
Good question. And I think, these are Supreme Court cases, and they say unduly burden or hinder, but it's up to the courts to decide in each factual scenario what that means. So, each side is going to argue, well, that didn't unduly burden your enforcement activity. And the DOJ would say, well, it did, and here's why. And so it comes down to facts, and, they kind of flesh it out in each case.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Any other comments? I also appreciate the opportunity for some of the potential examples and path forwards. That's helpful as well to see what others are doing. Okay. Hearing none and seeing none in the room. I appreciate the presentation. We'll go to our first item of new business,
Mr. Mayor?
which Councilmember.
I was going to make the motion. Didn't mean to
Oh, no,
step on you there.
no, please step on me.
Motion to close the meeting, consult with counsel to obtain legal advice under the general provisions of Article 3-305B7.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith and second by Councilmember Foe. Is there discussion on the motion? Do we discuss this? I'm not sure if it's discussed. We'll go to roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Colon.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 7-0. So we'll move to a closed meeting. In terms of what that means for folks in here, we're going to a closed meeting. We will come back to open meeting as well. I know it's late and we'll try to, we're going to be here at least to 10:30, but we'll try to extend it if necessary, or we can make a call and see if we need to have another meeting. But the purpose of this is to sort of get legal counsel specifically on some of the proposals that were submitted by Councilmember Smith, and as well as I think the multiple people have talked about as well. As mentioned, we can't debate it. So it's really just about questions on, is this legal or not? Your professional opinion as a lawyer. And so that I think help inform the council in terms of what moves forward. Okay. And so with that, in terms of like who's remaining, from obviously the council will be here both online as well. Mr. Town Manager, who from your staff do you want to include in closed session?
Yes, it'd be the police chief, the deputy chief, the deputy town manager, Mr. Shelton, who is going to be handling the meeting for folks joining virtually, and then Mr. Smith as our person or our employee services director.
Okay. And so with that, the meeting is closed. If folks want to stay around, you could probably stay in the vestibule between the outside and inside. There's a couple of chairs there. Or you can rejoin online if you choose to do that as well. Thank you all. We'll wait maybe a few minutes for folks to clear before we can close the meeting.
For later, I have a question about the AV guys. It's not like pressing.
There we go.
Okay. Welcome back to open session. Council member.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we extend the time of the meeting, and per our rules, the second extension does not have any boundaries on how long that period is. I'm not trying to keep anybody here for an extended period of time, so I would say such time as we may consume, but
yes, just leave it
I'm
there.
trying to get out of here too, so
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Smith to extend the meeting, second by Councilmember Lingua. We'll vote on this. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
Councilmember Worsnop.
Aye.
Is that an aye?
Aye.
Councilmember Colon.
Aye.
It's late. I also vote aye. We'll extend the meeting. I think in the spirit of, we want to get some type of, we don't stay here all night, but we're not locked to 30 minutes, but I think we should be in a pretty good spot before we conclude this.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Council member.
I'll keep this very brief. Over years of experience having meetings run this late, I have found that at the time, the meltdown time begins at 10:35. After that, everyone's brains just start going to mush. Things may be said that wish they weren't. So I would just say we try and not to go too far past that amount and get figured out what we want to do next.
Thank you, Councilmember. And we're starting early. It's at 7 instead of 7:30, so we're probably past the 10:35 mark. Okay, so we concluded council closed session. We received some legal counsel. We have some public in the waiting room, and wanted to open it up to an open session. So being deliberate in terms of putting this on the agenda as a discussion item, my main thought process was, if we introduce something, then we sort of introduce it as it is. If you want to make changes to it, it's an amendment process, and it's brutal on the dais because you have to get the language right. But I think we can have a robust conversation. I think in terms of there are a lot of good ideas. We think we have a sense in terms of like what we legally can and cannot do. And then I think there's an opportunity to sort of discuss both sides of this. And so again, I encourage everyone on council, please feel free to, make your case, whether in for and support. Let's try to keep it concise. And again, I would hope that we can, professionally, when I have conversations that are really tough, I have a mantra that I go by where let's be really tough on the problem and not the person. And so the idea being that, I can disagree adamantly with what a fellow council member is saying. But let's be mindful of, you can disagree with the purpose or the points or the policy, and not necessarily taking it personally. Right. And so with that, Councilmember Smith, if you want to give you the first opportunity.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first, thanks to everyone for indulging the conversation, which I think is really important and has been really good, and has been really encouraging, both in sort of the exchange and the legal advice and everything of that nature. I created the legislation in question because we had been discussing these problems for months without anything coming before the council that we could actually act on, and our community members vote very specific, very well-reasoned, common sense proposals to us. So I turned those into legislation that I intended to introduce tonight. After some of the legal advice, I think the sort of intent of everything here is totally compliant with the legal advice. And it sounds like we have some pretty good consensus on the council that the intent and the principles here have support. So, what I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, is if we can commit tonight to have a meeting before the end of July to move legislation drafted with consultation with lawyers, et cetera, all the things that are required there that reflect the 6 proposals from the community, and move those under emergency basis before the end of the month. I can refrain from introducing these tonight, but we need to act, and we need commitment that that'll be done before the end of the month.
I appreciate that. Before I give any commitments, let's have a conversation about that. I think I agree that we've had some input about some of these things, but I think it's worth having a conversation of sort of we support these items. And so I think I took some notes, sort of the best way to go about this. And if there's a better way of doing this, I encourage folks to sort of step in. But I think there's sort of a couple key areas or topics that should be discussed or amongst us. I think one is around, sort of like requirements in terms of what is said, or like requirements in terms of like what staff, and we'll figure out legally in terms of like what staff means. Yes, we can schedule a special in terms of like what's requirements for sort of staff when they encounter sort of ICE activity, and we'll figure out what we mean by encounter. But is it a script? Are there particular things? I think in your in your proposal, you have sort of requirements about asking for a warrant, ID, as sort of necessary things. Are there thoughts in terms of like, is that something that we would want to pursue or not pursue in terms of requiring staff to sort of request warrants, war ID, or purpose for being at a particular location. Councilmember Worsland.
Mr. Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry.
You'll be next, Councilmember.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do support looking into this, like with all of the caveats that you already laid out. I think that having clear direction in these situations is really critical. Not only to kind of ensure that we're staying true to what our policies and values are as a town, but also because it helps the particular people involved in the situation. These situations can be stressful. They can be potentially confrontational. They can be new experiences for people, and having a clear procedure can help in all of those circumstances for everybody's safety, but also for staying true to kind of our policies. So I don't know exactly what this should say. I think we have some potential models in our county and then also Montgomery County that I'd like to look into further. But I, on its face and spirit, am in favor of this, looking into this, and would support it if we can find the right way to do it. I do want to raise one kind of concern from a kind of tactical perspective, which is that we would want to pair this and other things with clear communication to the community, in that not kind of raising false expectations about what it means to have this kind of policy, along the lines of the fact that, you know, we can state what our policy is. We can state that we don't want this taking place. We can potentially ask for identification, all of that stuff, but we cannot actually force federal officers to comply, or force them to leave, or force them to do anything. So in terms of setting expectations, I think that would be important. I'll stop there though.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Foe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The turnout tonight was great. I love hearing the energy of our community, and it makes me truly proud to be a resident of Riverdale Park. It's really great to hear from a lot of those people. I have serious issues with engaging staff in immigration enforcement. I believe that to be a slippery slope that opens us up to potential litigation, and it also potentially endangers staff. That is just, it's going to take me significant convincing to change my mind on that, and I would like to hear more. I would like to see it written potentially from a legal perspective, engaging that. Two, it's not one of the, I don't think it's a legislated item. I'm not interested in an investigation of staff. We have to work with staff to accomplish this task and any of these tasks, and I think investigating ourselves it makes that job even more difficult. I don't believe there's meat on the bone for an investigation of what occurred, any more than it has already occurred. So I'm not interested in investigations to town staff. Now, when I'm reading it, and there's a lot of things here, and I have perused it, I've dialogued with Councilmember Smith, Ms. Cronk as well. I like the dialogue potentially about use of cameras, even though that is dependent upon state law. I like the dialogue about direct aid. I want to be there for our residents. I've talked to town staff, and I think the legislation addresses this, that we would probably have to outsource management of that program for a fee. And I would just say that, is the ask for $50,000, is the ask for $250,000, is the ask for $500,000? Because when we offered direct food aid, 200 residents were able to disperse of $33,000 a month. So I wonder about the longevity of $50,000. I believe in pragmatism. I want us to, I want this to be written by lawyers to address what it is that we want. I want to understand how it conflicts with existing code and what we may have to adjust to that. I understand the need for urgency, and I have no pushback towards additional legislative sessions. But this needs the light of day. This needs more dialogue. This needs to pass legal tests. And it also, for me, needs to ensure that no one else in our community is endangered by our actions. That is just where I am right now. I look forward to more robust dialogue moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Phil. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleague for Ward 2. I just want to clarify a couple things about the legislation, or at least respond. One, in terms of staff interaction with ICE, I agree. I think, staff safety is incredibly important, and we definitely don't want to deliberately put staff in harm's way. What was intended there, and I take the point that it is worded deficiently, but that when anyone on our staff recognizes that ICE is in our community operating, the response can't be we do nothing. It doesn't have to be that a landscaper walks 4 blocks to interrupt an ICE operation, but should probably notify the town manager and the police, and someone should go talk to ICE. If it, not obviously, since it's we're talking about it, but I don't want that level of specificity where folks who aren't trained for those interactions are required by the legislation to do so. And secondly, to the point on the investigation, I would clarify that this would not be an investigation of people, but of an incident. It's been more than a month. There's still a lot of things that haven't been cleared up, a lot of requests that haven't been responded to. So we still do not have a full picture of what happened that day. That said, that is, I don't think, if I recall correctly, specifically one of the 6 things. I don't see that as inseparable from the rest of this package. If there's not consensus on the council for the investigation piece, I'm happy to support everything else in here and save that for another day or let it be handled in our normal processes of just requesting information from staff. So, I'm not hanging on to that one tooth and nail.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments from council? I know we were trying to go point by point, but I think Councilmember Pho, I appreciate you just kind of laying out your top of mind, your priorities. Maybe that's probably an easier way to do this. So Councilmember Worsam, I don't know if I restrict you in some way, if you had other points you wanted to make, please feel free to do so.
No, thank you. I will jump in now if others didn't want to say anything at the moment. I'll be as brief as possible. First, I also appreciate everyone's participation in this conversation and all of the community members that came out. I am also incredibly concerned, upset, and also hopeful that we can do something in a timely fashion. So thank you for that. And thank you to my colleague in Ward 1 for putting these proposals down on paper. I think it is incredibly important that we have something tangible to discuss, even though there remains some disagreement on the path forward. So I'm glad we're doing that now. I already kind of made my comments about the looking into kind of a protocol for how to respond to these situations. We still need to work out those details. But in terms of the other kind of proposals put forward, I am also potentially in favor of the point about the body cameras. I'd like us to further look into that. For me, this is not aimed at our officers, but instead at just capturing interactions with federal officials. So would be curious if that is feasible, both from a legal perspective, but also would like to hear from our police chief and town staff on their thoughts on this at some point. In terms of investigation, I agree with my colleague from Ward 2. I think we have established protocols for that. I'm not in favor of doing kind of anything other than that. In terms of, there were other parts of the legislation that touched on kind of information sharing about potential ICE activity in town. And there was some model legislation, I think, from from Prince George's County on this, on collecting more data. I think this is something that we should do if possible or explore in some way. So I'd want to look at that legislation further from the county. But related to that, we might want to think about establishing some kind of multi-stakeholder task force or committee that meets regularly, that is focused on information sharing. This could include council, staff, community members, our police department representatives, just to make sure that everyone's talking to each other. We know that things are changing over time and different actors have different types of information and experience. So that to me would be related to kind of more regular information sharing on this, which we know is a particular challenge in this environment. But I'd also be in favor potentially of more formal kind of data collection if possible, though I know that, everyone is already strapped on that. So maybe we could partner with a group or organization. Then I also, I think a number of the existing other pieces of legislation from Montgomery and Prince George's County speak to the spirit of many of the proposals in Councilmember Smith's package. And some of them actually weren't covered in the package that I think I am interested in potentially looking at. For instance, like the Prince George's County had put forward legislation where police could be called to confirm identity of potential federal officers in certain situations. So I'm interested in looking into that. Caveat being that I know we received legal advice and I really appreciate that, but I'm also interested in kind of on the ground experience that the counties have had in implementing these from a tactical and strategic perspective. So in terms of information collection, I'd like to hear from them on how this has gone. I know that none of us want to make the situation any worse than it is. So even if we can technically do some of these things, I'd like the opportunity for us to think through, whether we should do all of them, whether they could have some unanticipated knock-on negative effects. We should think carefully about those things. Then just two more things quickly. I am in favor of some kind of fund. Agree, we probably have to partner with an organization on this, but I think it is really critical and important to dedicate some resources to helping people out. And also in favor of moving forward on these things in a timely fashion, definitely available for a special legislative meeting if necessary. So want to say that now. And I am going to stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few items. I would encourage the council when it comes to the fund and information gathering and data and all that, to consider approaching the county and the other municipalities. We are 1.67 square miles. And yes, too much ICE activity is happening here. But in terms of putting together a fund, if everyone was contributing to that fund, if the county was contributing to that fund, because I take Councilmember Fo's point of just how quickly the money goes. And so I would encourage the council to consider approaching the county and PGCMA to explore whether or not there could be a larger pooling of resources to help families. Because what I've heard from the council about all of our grant programs is it's for town residents. What happens to the person in the unincorporated area immediately outside of Riverdale Park that still has their kids here at our elementary school? So I just encourage the council to perhaps see if the county and the other municipalities could join together to do something. As it relates to the other legislation, as someone who has written legislation for the last 20 years, I think my opinion is this is going to take more than one more discussion. And I know that's an unpopular thing to hear, but I do think this is going to take more than one more discussion. And if you're going to have Ms. Scheer work on this, I think the first thing to do is to ask her what her calendar looks like. And because she's doing a lot of legal work for us, but she's not our town attorney. And so I don't know how full her calendar is. So she would have to be involved. And what you may want to do, Mr. Mayor, is consider looking at what aspects of legislation are the top priority. If you could rank order these and say, this is what we want to see across the finish line first, second, third, fourth. And then that helps staff, that helps Ms. Scheer, if you're going to have her, or if you're going to get a different attorney to work on this. It helps organize things a little bit. And from my experience, we'd be able to return more timely if we're not trying to take on all the aspects at one time. That would be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Councilman Ramos.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry if I sound a little down. I've been up since 5 this morning. But I did want to say that, I do understand that we want to have protocols in place for situations involving ICE and other federal agents in Riverdale. I was able to review the list. I did listen to what the lawyer had to say, Miss Victoria. And honestly, I feel like the list needs to be reviewed. It needs to be revised. I want to make sure that we are following all federal, state, and local laws. I want to make sure that we're doing everything correctly, especially for our residents. I don't want our residents to feel like we're going to be able to do something that we may not be able to do. There are some things that I do agree. As I stated, it's very important for all of us that the procedures that we do adopt are legally understood by staff and are aligned with us. In addition, I also wanted to add that with the resources, I completely understand that maybe we do not have the funds, but is there any way maybe we can explore options? Maybe if we can find ways to see how we can support our residents, maybe we can build relationship with nonprofits, organizations, maybe free pro bono legal advices, maybe find community groups who can give us that assistance for our residents who do live with us, or even ones like, our town manager stated, we do have some kids that go to Riverdale Elementary who don't live in Riverdale Elementary, but at least if we have the information, the referrals, or how we can offer the assistance, network with these resources so that we're able to at least provide this information to them. I know 311 exists. I know that there are some nonprofits that work with us already, but there are other places within Montgomery County and PG County as well that can assist. So I know we want to focus on protocol, but I think that we should also focus on resources. And even if we don't have the budget, find other ways on how we can get these resources out there for the residents. I'm going to try my best to see if I can assist. I know I have a friend of mine who works for 311. I'm going to see if she can actually give me information, because she gets a lot of calls and sometimes she advises me on how, our residents, whether they're immigrants or non-immigrants, can get pro bono, can get resources for food bank. I just want to make sure that we're also thinking outside the box and not just on how can we keep ICE out, but also on how we can help these families. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Councilmember. You brought up an interesting point about, and I think it's a worth conversation about. So my opinion on the signs was something that has kind of been evolving, I think, throughout this day. You know, on one side, I see the value of being very clear of, uh, you know, ICE isn't welcome, being explicit in terms of like, you know, these particular spaces they can't be in. But I'm also concerned about the, you know, are we knowing that, you know, it allows us to definitely state our opinions, our values, knowing that ICE could still like ignore it. Are we setting residents up for a false sense of security where we're saying that they're in a space? And because we think about some of these spaces, right? Like as an example, this space right here is a public space, the council chambers, right? But like the offices in the back is sort of like town owned private space, right? And so, you know, uh, if we deem to say like, we're going to say like, hey, these spaces are private and, ICE can't be in there and, but they choose to be here anyway. Does that mean someone doesn't someone comes to a meeting thinking that they have a certain level of protection, but they don't, like it's well-intentioned, but could it have like, I think the knock-on effect or negative knock-on effect that, Councilmember Worsnop also mentioned as well. And so I'm struggling with that. I'm curious if others have sort of similar opinions on how do we sort of solve for that. Now also hearing how other municipalities are sort of using that as part of their legal basis to be able to say, well, we're putting signs up as a way to demonstrate this is private. So I think it's almost required or helpful in terms of making that argument. But from a best case scenario, we're making it difficult, and ICE is like, well, it's probably not worth it. But if you have an officer who's like, I could care less, right? What are the unintended consequences for that? So I'm curious if others have sort of thoughts on sort of signage, since I think that's one thing that we haven't necessarily specifically discussed.
Mr. Mayor?
Council member.
One thing on that, and I think applies to several of the other issues, apologize for not mentioning this earlier, but I've had conversations with Senator Washington about these sort of things. And one of the things he mentioned was that, if we have these sort of things in place and ICE violates them, it's not necessarily up to us to enforce them. That we could, all it would take per Senator Washington was letting him know that this is the thing that happened, providing him the information, and he would refer that to the state attorney general's office for action. Now, it's a referral. What the attorney general's office does with that is up to them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're on our own enforcing that here. And then just in terms of the schedule, I'm sympathetic to the idea that getting legislation together might take more than one conversation. I do think that whatever we decide to do, we need to put some time constraints on ourselves, because we've gone too long with not acting. So I know the community ask has been end of July. That's what I referred to earlier. I could maybe have my arm twisted into the first week of August, but like we need to do something. We've gone long enough without taking action. We have to respond.
Councilmember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, on that point, I think, in terms of what town managers brought up in terms of prioritization, I think what we come up with are 3 things that we want to have action on, have it ready by the beginning of August. To the point we were saying about with Delegate Washington, this is something I brought up before. With there are things, if we're going to pass things that we're saying that has been talked about, in terms of like how they may not be something that we can immediately enforce. What we can do is file, look into ways to being able to file formal complaints. This is essentially what Delegate Washington is talking about, be it to the, state's attorney or whomever, or if we're doing it on a federal level or through a court, the district court, filing formal complaints. Essentially, people think, well, you're filing a complaint, where is it going to go? Well, it's on record then. And it seems the one thing that has been that where things are essentially addressed to the administration is through the courts. So we're going to need to avail ourselves of that avenue. It may take a while to get through the courts, but there's a good chance, and what we are seeing, things are getting through on the courts. And the administration's record in the courts is not a winning one.
Depends the court, but I hear you. It's a fair point. And so I think the one thing that I think I would probably my plan to think going into this was probably sort of suggesting a sub-quorum of council to try and do some of this work in conjunction with the town attorney. But it's so we can think about it. We don't have to necessarily land on that right now. The idea being that I think I hear everyone's point that the ball needs to continue progressing, right? Outside of this meeting, because it's that's just a more efficient way of doing it. I'm all for sort of the need for trying to put this time bound. I'd like to see where we get in the next 2 weeks or so. We need, I think, at least 24 hours notice. I think we would give more, but I think people should feel like it's not something where it's if we have a breakthrough and we feel like we're pretty good, that we can kind of turn around quickly and say, hey, we're going to have a public notice. We stick to Mondays because that's our norm. There are no holidays in the next, couple of weeks. And so I think everyone sort of agreed to keep our Mondays free. And so we should. And so I'm hesitant to sort of put a time limit on, as much as I know people want it, but I think there is an element of let's start progressing. And the goal is we definitely shouldn't leave that. We shouldn't exit August with nothing, but let's sort of see where we are, and we can kind of make a case on that. Those are my initial thought process. Councilmember, two hands. I think Foe was first, and then Councilmember Worsnop. Councilmember Foe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I ask the council forgiveness. It's 11:06, and I don't have much left. I think when we're talking about do nows, I was talking with the town manager, and that property is one I fear. That confused me, that view that I just saw. That property is the one I most fear because I fear immigration activity against our students going to school and their parents potentially. And I want to make sure that property is protected at all costs. I had asked previously for that lot to remain open for teachers. School is closed. The town manager assessed to me or told me that the plan moving forward is to lock both the Queensberry and Taylor's sides. I'm open to the idea that we might need to have a video camera on that lot as well. I just want to make sure that we are reviewing town spaces and potentially see where we may exist in vulnerability as we continue, or as we look forward to potentially passing legislation to declare specific areas private property where we can. Secondly, and I think that this is huge, I think we need to understand what our staff resources are and the availability of staff. The town manager has spoken to me specifically about not having the bandwidth to accomplish all of these tasks, sometimes in relationship to the day-to-day job that our staff is doing. So I think we need to understand what our staff is capable of, where we potentially could outsource some things, and how we can get an appropriate workflow moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Worsnop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of prioritization, I just want to second what my colleague from Ward 2 said about assessing other town spaces and kind of doing what we can now to make those somewhat less accessible and at least start a list of places that we could designate as private. Second, as we work on other legislation based on this discussion, looking into what Councilmember Ramos said about resources, I think is also something that could be started that doesn't necessarily need legislation, though obviously if we were dedicating new resources, we would need to pass something, but looking into kind of other options for partnering or making more information accessible, at least in the meantime, wouldn't really need new legislation. But yeah, I'm in favor of setting some kind of time limit, but not rushing to the extent that we're not doing this correctly, or as correctly as we can, recognizing that there's always going to be uncertainty here. Thanks.
Councilman Fo, is that a new hand? No, it's a Lego scene. Okay.
No.
All right. So I think we're before I start, any Councilmember Colon, you haven't spoken, anything that you want to add before we kind of wrap this up? I'll try to summarize what my takeaways are.
Mr. Mayor, you see, this is something which is very difficult because, as I said, I think 2 months ago, this federal operation and Miss Victoria have already analyzed everything about this operation. The only thing, let's keep praying that some of us, our family members, have been deported. But let's keep praying. Maybe God will help us to avoid this type of things in the future. Because you cannot challenge a federal government. I said this many, many times. But when you're explaining it, some people, they think you are not interested of what is going on. Some of my family members, my colleagues, they have been deported. Many of them. But what can we do? Nothing. Because they are looking for people who don't, undocumented people, and those who have committed an offense. They are in record. These are the people they're looking for. So if you are lucky, your people are not involved, those undocumented people are not involved, they didn't come across them, you are a lucky person. But I don't see how can we challenge the federal government on this. I said this many, many, many times. This is a federal government operation. And this lawyer have already analyzed everything. I was listening. So let's just keep praying so that God can take us from these atrocities. So that is my take. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right. So I think where I sort of see we landed, I think there is conversation around the defining sort of public versus private space. There is sort of work to be done on what are the language that sort of that's like required for folks who interact with ICE. I think there's been mixed, not staff, probably police, but maybe there's a reporting element of if someone sees it, what's the process? I think unofficially, or should be probably call the dispatch, right? So report it that way, rather than sort of like requiring all staff, especially non police, to sort of go in and personally engage. There's been a lot of talk in support about a fund, suggestion of expand the tent, reach out to other municipalities, see who partner with nonprofits, see who's already doing something like this, and is there an opportunity for us to, direct funds there for the purposes for sort of Riverdale Park specific residents, knowing that that has its limitations. If you are part of our community, but you don't live in the municipal bounds, then you would be excluded. Or is there an opportunity to partner with someone who's sort of doing this work a little more broadly, and linking more than just funds, but even are there pro bono other resources that can be provided? So another thing that was sort of talked about. I think there's probably work to be done on sort of amending or updating, or even, do we pull chapter 53 of our code out to be, which is underneath police right now, and do we separate it out and have it stand on its own, and sort of to reconcile that so it's on its own particular location with some of the things that were in terms. That's just more like where does these recommendations land? And then I think there's, I'm supportive of having, at least one more legislative session in order to do this. I still think that we might want to have a subquorum of council, at least meet and try to put some additional thoughts on this. At the very least, probably like go back and review this meeting and some of the notes that were talked about here. Subquorum basically is, quorum is 4 members, so it'd have to be 3 members or less, so that it's not an open meeting and, gets in trouble, which we found out, which we learned about earlier today about the Open Meetings Act. Yeah. And so, I know it's late. I think I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn in a second. I think I appreciate folks, sticking around into extra hours and innings, knowing that there were other things that were happening. Obviously, it's really important. 2, I think it was helpful as a council for us to sort of discuss a lot of these topics, because they're all well-intentioned, but I think there's conversations on, do we do something and what are the unintended consequences of something, and something that we sort of, that if we enact, I think it's clear that, folks want to make sure whatever we do holds up to sort of legal scrutiny. We're not opening the town up to liability, but also knowing that, in the case of a overzealous or an ICE officer who's like, I just disregard your rules, that no one's advocating for us to sort of interfere or stop them. But, to other points have been raised of how do we document it? How do we try to make a case, with the hope that, federal policy changes, right? And there's an avenue for these things to be sort of further explained. So I think that's, I appreciate Councilmember Smith sort of helping, to take a first draft at some of this stuff and sort of help us agitate moving forward. The devils will be in the details in some of this. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm thinking sort of like a subquorum might make sense. And if anyone on council right now is like dying to do that, feel free to let me know. But the hope is that the next time we meet as a community, not necessarily that everything is completely done, but things have been thought out. And at the very least, like you've seen in other parts of our meeting, if it's down to, hey, we've got 2 options or 2 recommendations, we can do this or we can do that, that's always helpful, to, again, continue to move the ball forward. I think everyone wants to find solutions that work. But, ultimately, I'll also just be completely honest in that, to the point about setting false expectations, we could implement everything that we want right? And it's not going to guarantee that someone isn't obtained, right? But I think it's an opportunity of how do we weigh the making it, I don't want to say difficult, but creating friction. I think our policy already talks about like, there's not cooperation, right? And so continue to sort of add the proper, appropriate level of friction, while also being aware that, we need to support our community. And that's, some of it's financial, but some of it is just the, how do we clarify some of this? And I know some of this meeting seemed really like in the weeds, and the purpose behind it was, I think it's important for all of us to just understand like what the law is. It's really nuanced, and one word changes the definitions of stuff. So I appreciate this work from everyone. And with that, I'll ask if there's a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Council member.
motion to adjourn.
Is there a
Seconded.
second? Motion by Councilmember Smith and second by Councilmember Foe. We don't discuss it. We'll go to roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Warsnop.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos.
Aye.
And Councilmember Kalan.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion passes 7-0. We are closed at 11:20. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
It's good to be back, everyone.
Good night.